All right, I'm not saying anything until I know that the stream is going. Hello to you guys. Welcome to another live stream I'm doing. And let me know in the chat if you guys can hear me. The stream should be starting up any second now if it isn't already. It is Tuesday, December 1st, first of the month, and I am live streaming commentary for the US Chess League. So this is the finals of the United States Chess League, which is a team-based league, and I'm going to be doing some commentary for the next probably 3 to 4 hours, however long these games last. And the games have already started. We'll get to those in a minute. Looks like everything is up and running. Hello to you guys in the chat. How many we got? Hasn't displayed the stats yet, but we'll see in a second. All right. I like to hear that. Stream's good. You guys got your coffee? You ready? Especially if you're in Europe. It's very late at night. It's about 7 o'clock p.m. U.S. Central Time, a little after. So thank you for those who have stayed up late. Probably most of you are going to be staying up late if you're going to watch this entire stream. And to start out, I thought I'd just kind of give you a rundown of what we got in store tonight as far as the matchups go. So to do that, I'm going to put the US Chess League homepage up on the screen for now. And actually, let me minimize ICC just so we have a nice little background to look at. Okay, so as I was saying, the US Chess League is an internet-based league, so all these games that we're going to be seeing tonight are played online, and it's teams played on 4 boards, so 4 boards per team, and the 2 players that have made it through this arduous 2015 season are the St. Louis Archbishops versus the Manhattan Applesauce. Okay, so those are the 2 squads facing off tonight, and I know it's kind of small, you probably can't see it too well, but the 2 players, or 2 teams, have 2 GMs in the lineup each. So for St. Louis, we've got Grandmaster Ilya Nizhnik and Varuzha Nakobian against, for Manhattan, Alex Lenderman and Zviad Zoria. So those occupy the top 2 boards, GM versus GM matchups. And then on the bottom boards, we've got some less well-known players, but the thing about the league is every board is worth the same. So a win on board 1 is worth the same as a win on board 4. Okay, so don't discount the bottom boards as you're watching these games. And on the bottom boards, we have National Master Spencer Feingold, son of Ben Feingold, Grandmaster. Spencer versus National Master Levi Rosman. And we have National Master Nicholas Rosenthal versus Akira Nakata, who this is the only player I haven't really heard of. I believe this is a young player. So this is what we're looking at today. And just checking to make sure everything's still good on the stream. So I'll get into my predictions in a little bit, but since the games have already started, why don't we go and take a look? And I can always bring this back and we'll kind of discuss the players and maybe the results like leading up to tonight's match. But for now, let me minimize this and bring up ICC again. So we've got 4 boards of action going on. Now I'm going to bring up all 4 right away just so I can put them in frame. Looks like board 3 hasn't started yet. There might be a problem with one of the players being late or possibly with an internet connection issue. And the time control for tonight's match is game in 75, so 75 minutes per side with a 30-second increment. And that's very close to like standard tournament time controls. A lot of times these days you see game in 90 minutes with a 30-second increment. So we're pretty close with that. These games are going to go a while. And that 30-second increment really adds to the quality of the games, in my opinion, because you're not going to see any like absolutely insane time scrambles where the clock is going to be the sole deciding factor. The clock will still definitely be a factor, and I predict several of these games will go down to the wire. But with that 30-second increment, there's always that buffer, so people aren't just like flagging and losing or drawing positions. So. Hello, FCST fan. He says, hi, John, Team Scandy. I'm going to keep an eye on the chat as well as I can tonight. What's up, Andrew? He says he's psyched for the stream tonight. Hungy as well. Benjamin, how's it going? Lots of familiar faces in the chat tonight. Squash Addict. Hey, Zachary, glad you were able to finally catch a live stream as well. John, did you play in the league yourself? Yes, I did. So I played, I think, 6 games this season for the Minnesota Blizzard. And it was our first year in the season, so Minnesota's first time ever in the US Chess League. We finally have 2 Grandmasters here in my home state of Minnesota, so we had a nice little debut in the league. Did okay, could have been better. I think we finished right around a 50% score, so not enough to qualify for the playoffs, but for our first season, we'll take it. Squash Addict says, nice of the USCL to host at an Aussie-friendly time. Yeah, I feel bad for you Aussies because you usually get the short end of the stick when it comes to live streams as far as the starting time. So, yeah, that's good that it actually worked out all right this time around. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go through and kind of show what's going on each board. And since these games are so long, we're going to have plenty of time to check out the action. So this first board, we have Ilya Nizhnik as white against Alex Lenderman. It started off as d4, and we got a Nimzo Indian. And black played a pretty trendy move here, looks to me, b6. This is a move that I've seen played increasingly in the last, I'd say year or so. The normal moves here are for black to castle or play d5 or c5, but b6 has become popular, and you see a lot of players playing this. So Nizhnik played a3, and we got a trade, and then f3, probably playing to control the e4 square. And Lenderman played c5, and we got a pawn trade here, and now bishop g5, pinning the knight on f6. This looks like standard Nimzo Indian fare to me. I don't think anything crazy has happened yet, and very likely one or both players are still in their prep. They've hardly used any time. So safe to say we can come back to this game, and they're probably going to be still in well-known territory. So let's go check out game number 2. And also, I'll be able to put these games in analysis mode as well, so we can look at the games and move the pieces around ourselves too. It's a little hard to orient the boards correctly, but we'll do our best. Okay, so this game we have Zviad Zoria playing for the Manhattan team against Varuzha Nakobian. And I was looking at the stats for the players in this match, and a lot of the guys who are playing tonight have really good records in the league this season. No surprise. I mean, both teams want to put their best foot forward and put their top guys in the lineup. But like Zoria, for instance, he's played, I think, 10 matches this season. There's 10 weeks of regular season play, and then there's the playoffs. So he's already got quite a run throughout this season. And I think he has scored something like 7.5 out of 10. And Akobian also is doing very well. I think he has like something like 7 out of 9. So a strong plus score from both players occupying board 1. I'm pretty sure both these guys have played board 1 throughout the season. So we've got a French defense here. Akobian is a prolific French player, so I'm not surprised to see a French defense on the board. And Zoria might be somewhat of a less-known player to you guys, but this guy, I kind of feel like he's gone in and out of chess as far as his interest level with the game has gone. But this guy is very strong, let me tell you. I don't know if I've ever faced him over the board. I've played Akobian a couple times, but I don't know if I've ever faced Zoria. But just to give you an indication of his class, he won the 2005 HB Global Chess Championship, which was kind of the precursor to Millionaire Chess. Maurice Ashley was one of the organizers of that event, and Zoria took home a $50,000 prize in that tournament back in 2005. And I think he kind of lost interest in chess for a while. He wasn't very active, but now I see him starting to play a little bit more, and judging by his score on board 1 in the US Chess League this season, this guy's still like very strong. So this game I think is going to be a battle. And in fact, I think Manhattan has to score on this board for sure. Like very least a draw, but I think if they want to win this match, Zoria has got to score with the white pieces here. I guess I'll tell you right now, my prediction is that St. Louis will win this match and win the USCL championships. I think they're the clear favorites. I haven't really looked at what anyone else has to say about the chances for success for both teams, but just looking at the lineups and what I know about these players and also the way they've been performing this season, I would be pretty surprised if Manhattan won this thing. I think Manhattan's going to have to play above their expectation if they want to pull off a victory in this match. No offense to anyone on the Manhattan team. And actually, I used to play for Manhattan, so you can't accuse me of just hating on them for no reason. But I think they're a little outclassed in this current lineup. So yeah, this is a French defense and pretty typical stuff right here. Once again, I think this is all theory. We've got an opposite side castling position, so that's already a prime indicator that the game could get sharp. We could see some fireworks in this one. With a6, Jacobian might eventually be preparing b5, trying to strike back on the queen side and initiate play on that wing. So this will be a good game to keep an eye on. How's it going, Pulse Designs? Hello to you. I think you're a local guy. I know who you are. John, have you played all of these players before? Asks Jonas. I played some of them before. I played Jacobian before. I played Lenderman. I played Ilya Nizhnik online. He's been featured in some of my bullet videos, actually. He plays on Lee Chess from time to time. And I don't know. I've played Spencer Feingold before. I had a draw with Spencer Feingold one time. On the other players on the bottom boards, I don't believe I've played. Rosman, Nicky Rosenthal, I haven't played him, although I know of him. And the board four for, is it Manhattan? I haven't played him either, the young guy. Ooh, we've got a celebrity in the chat. Is that Little Peasant, the Grandmaster? Please tell us if it's you. Little Peasant is Grandmaster Alejandro Ramirez, who now lives in St. Louis. Good buddy of mine. I just saw him not long ago at that tournament in Dallas. So, Alejandro, identify yourself. Love to see top guys show up in the chat. And Alejandro is now somewhat affiliated with the St. Louis Chess Club. He does some work for them. So no mystery who he's going to be pulling for tonight, I think. He already said go St. Louis in the chat. Hello to you, BS Darian. I like how you extended my last name as if it wasn't long enough already. A wild Gabe Ewing has appeared. Who is Gabe Ewing? I know who he is, but who is he in the chat? Anyways, let's keep going. So this is board 2. Let's put this one on the back burner for now. Let's see if board 3 actually started up. And it did. Spencer Feingold versus Levi Rosman. Okay, so, I mean, part of the reason why I was kind of getting down on one of the teams a little bit was because of a matchup like this. This is a severe mismatch rating-wise. Spencer Feingold does have the white pieces, but this is a pretty big rating gap. I mean, 200 points, essentially. So I think Spencer Feingold, even with the white pieces, is going to have his hands full against Rosman. We'll see. But this game was a Dutch, d4, f5, and white played knight c3 on move 2. So, yeah, I also kind of like knight c3 on move 2. This is a line I've been playing around with a little bit. And the idea is to get in a quick e4 if allowed. Hence, black will usually play knight f6 or d5 to try to prevent that. So here, and then bishop to g5, and then d5, and then f3. That's kind of unusual. I don't know if I've seen f3 before in this exact position. f3 on move 4. Because usually white will jump at the opportunity to take on f6 and double up black's pawns. So f3 surprises me just a little bit. Could be some prep, though, by Feingold. I mean, pretty safe bet. It looks to me like Rosman might have been late for this match, or they had some issue, because note that he's already down over 10 minutes on the clock. So probably they had some technical issue or he was running late. Well, I kind of like what Feingold is doing here, to be honest. Like, I think he's going to be instrumental if St. Louis is really going to take home the victory and maybe assert themselves early on. If he kind of comes out with all guns blazing and shows that he's not afraid of Rosman, then that could set the tone of the match, because Rosman absolutely has to score in this game, I think. I think black has to win this game. I mean, this is the one board where they significantly outrate their opponents. So I think he pretty much has to get a victory no matter what. But Spencer Feingold is, I mean, no slouch. He is currently, according to this, rated 2187, but the USCF ratings they use for this league are not current ratings. And I played Spencer before. He's plenty capable of beating someone like Rosman if he can. So I'll be curious to see what happens on this board. Knight c6 was played. This position already looks completely bizarre to me. This will be a fun one. Okay, let's go to that last board. If I can find it. I've already got too many windows open. Hold on. Is it this one? Nope. Okay, here we go. This is the board I was looking for, and let me get that in frame. Okay, so this one we have Akira Nakata for Manhattan, 2035 against Nikki Rosenthal. So black outrates white on this board, and also Rosenthal has been having a good season in the league and in general is an up and coming player. So I think this board trends towards St. Louis. And what do we have? We have another D4 game. So we've got three D4 games and an E4 game in that Isoria versus Akobian matchup. D4, D5, C4, Knight C6. All right, so Rosenthal playing the Shigorin variation. Rosenthal has kind of an interesting style. He's kind of a creative player, and I've noticed that he often plays openings that are sort of maligned by mainstream theory. But he has his own style, and he's a very good practical player. I think he does a good job of kind of sensing the tempo of a game, and he's capable of uh, attacking and also like finding resourceful defenses if necessary. So the Shigorin actually kind of like fits his playing style. I think it's a little funky and White played h3 here. That's not a move you usually see. You almost always see either c takes d5 or knight c3, trying to more directly influence the setter. I mean, considering that black like will often play bishop takes f3 like voluntarily, I don't know if h3 is the best decision early on. It's possible it's book or something, but I'm a little skeptical of this choice. But Nakata is playing pretty fast, so again, maybe he has something up his sleeve. This being the USCL championship, I think players are going to come to this match pretty well prepared. At least I would if I was playing in the USCL championships. I think they're going to be doing their homework, and no one's going to want to look foolish by being out of book like on move 4 or 5. So you never know. Hello again to the chat. Thanks for you guys who are tuning in right about now. We're going to be going for a while, like I said. So if you just tuned in, look forward to a good night of chess commentary. And I'll be answering questions and talking about some other stuff. Hello, Arun. Arun Sharma in the chat is one of the. Is it fair to call you a co-commissioner, Arun? He's basically Greg's like right-hand man, although Arun probably would not like me saying that. Arun does a lot of the behind-the-scenes work for the U.S. Chess League, and him and Greg are basically the guys who make the chess league happen. Like they're the point people who coordinate the matches, and they do all of the dirty work to make sure the league runs smoothly. So good to see Arun showing up. Okay, let's go back to, I just wanted to show you some of the stats on the players once again. So don't worry if I minimize these games. This is going to be going on a long time tonight. So, all right, so here's again the lineups that we got. And as I was saying, I mean, I think Manhattan kind of has their work cut out for them. If I had to take two Grandmasters over two Grandmasters, I would take Nizhnik and Akobian over Lenderman and Isoria. I mean, you can see here, these are USCF ratings, by the way. Both these guys are in the 2700s USCF. Nizhnik and Lenderman, both like pretty good youngish Grandmasters. Nizhnik is younger than Lenderman. But Nizhnik with white, I give him the nod over Lenderman. Akobian is one of the best players in the U.S. Isoria is still very good. I'll be interested to see how that game goes, but I think pretty good chances for a draw on this board, if I had to guess. And, I mean, Manhattan has to kind of think like where they're going to gather the points. And I think this board 3, is where they just absolutely have to score, and ideally have Isoria score as well, because I just don't really see Lenderman winning or Akira Nakata winning. Lenderman has black against Nizhnik, and Nakata, despite having white, is outrated, and he's up against a player who is quite talented. So let's just take a look at the standings or the results for these players. And again, I apologize if this is a little small. Hopefully you can see it. But this is Nizhnik, to Ilya Nizhnik, born in 1996, young player. Hasn't played a whole lot of games in the league. Only 4 games, but scored 2 out of 4. And we've got Akobian. He's been one of the more active players for the St. Louis Archbishops. 7 out of 9. Great score on board 1. I think almost anyone would like to have that score. Has he even lost a game this season? Looks like he lost to Gureyev in game 2, week 2 of the season. But beyond that, he's been undefeated. And actually, he's riding a 5-game winning streak in the league heading into this. And in the semifinals, as you can see, he beat Ruifeng Li from Dallas in a nice game, and he won Game of the Week for that. So he's got a performance rating of 2,800 in the league. And I mean, if Manhattan was expecting to face anyone else on board 2 or 1 in this match, they were sorely mistaken because, of course, St. Louis is going to ride Akobian. And let's see, Spencer Feingold. Pretty lukewarm record for him in 2015, 2 out of 6. And we've also got Nicky Rosenthal, who has been a heavy scorer. Oh, look at that picture. Looking very dapper right there. He's got the shades on and everything. But yeah, Rosenthal, 8 out of 9. That's MVP numbers right there. Performance rating of 2463, vastly outperforming his on paper rating. Yeah, he's playing 300 points above his expectation. That's fantastic. And look at this. He's got all decisive games, too. No draws in 9 games this season. So, yeah, I mean, they would just, St. Louis would love to have him win on board 4. That's exactly what they're hoping. Okay, now let's look at Manhattan. So we've got Alex Lenderman, solid player. Lenderman always strikes me as a guy who can kind of keep things locked down. And I mean, I think Nizhnik is going to pressure him. I don't know if Nizhnik will win that game, but I think he's going to pressure Lenderman. And he's scored 3 out of 4 so far. Good score. Playing 3 GMs and an IM in the league. He's undefeated so far this year. Let's check out Izoria, one of the most active players for Manhattan. 7.5 out of 10. Very good record once again. And that's right up there with Akobian 7 out of 9, virtually the same thing. And he's been involved in 2 Game of the Week decisions, a draw against Maxim Delugi in week 2, and in week 9 he beat Mika Bertain to win Game of the Week. Also performing at a very high level, 2,700. Moving down the Manhattan lineup, Levy Roseman. He's been scoring well, also 7 out of 9. Yeah, I mean, both these teams have been trotting out their high-scoring players. So 7 out of 9 for Roseman. Strong player. Don't know that much about him. And here is probably the least known player, just because of how young he is. Look at Akira Nakata, born 2003. Okay, so he's 12 years old, and has had a rough go of it. This is his first year in the league, 1.5 out of 8. So he's had a rough go of it. But if there's ever a time that he can help his team out, it's definitely tonight. I mean, for him to even get a draw, I think, against Rosenthal would be huge for the Manhattan Applesauce. So that's what we're looking at here. Let's go back to the action. And once again, I'm going to kind of cycle through these boards a little bit. This is board 2, and we got board 2, 3. Let's go back to board 1. Okay, so Nizhnik versus Lenderman. And by the way, I didn't mention this before, but all these games are taking place on the Internet Chess Club, ICC. And I believe anyone can log on and watch the games, although you have to have a membership to unlock like all the ICC features. If you don't want to bother on going on ICC, don't worry. I'm going to be showing you guys the games, so no worries there. So we've got Nizhnik castling queenside. We picked it up. We last left off right after bishop g5. Black played knight c6 and then e3. So Nizhnik put the pawn on e3, I think, to stop the knight from coming into d4. Smart decision. If he were to grab more space with e4, he'd be leaving like a gaping hole here on d4. So I think smart decision to play the restrained e3 and deny Black's knight the use of d4. And then he castles. Okay, so saying I'm going to pressure you down the d file and attack that pawn on d6. Yeah, still looks pretty standard. I mean, I've never seen this position before, but just the way the play has developed looks normal. And Lenderman plays rook b8. Mysterious move. Probably if the rook is going to be active on the queen side, it is down the b file. So rook b8 could be a prelude to moving the light square bishop at some point. That rook is kind of lying in wait for an opportunity to strike down the file. Looks kind of like a high-class move to me. He rates it higher than, for instance, castling or maybe moving the queen out of the way. So Nizhnik hasn't touched his king side yet, so I'd expect him to start trying to bring out these pieces, like maybe even knight h3 or bishop d3. He could potentially try to attack the d6 pawn as well, although it looks a little artificial. But I mean, if I were black, I would at least look at something like bishop f4 hitting d6 or queen d2 attacking d6. Seems kind of logical. Okay, and board 2. I'm going to have to reorder these so I don't like click around randomly. Yeah, Isoria and Akobian. Not much changed here. This, again, looks pretty normal. So we left off with Akobian playing a6 and getting ready to expand with b5 soon. To do that, though, he has to address the knight on c6, because if he were to play b5 right here, white would simply take on c6 and say, game over, I win a piece. So he eliminates the knight on d4, plays bishop takes d4, and now b5. And Isoria plays the bishop back to e3. Okay. So here, white has the bishop pair, but at the moment, it looks like black sort of has the jump on white in the pawn storm department. Black has already started moving the A and the B pawns down the board, whereas white hasn't made like a complementary pawn push or two on the king side. So we'll keep an eye on this. How you guys doing in the chat? Everybody good? Everybody feeling good? You got your caffeine of choice? I've got my coffee. I went to Starbucks and I got a big one. I got a venti right before the stream started. Even though it's 7:30 at night and I have a flight to catch tomorrow, I'm not above drinking coffee in the evening. My flight isn't until tomorrow night, so I can excuse myself for having a lot of caffeine this late. It's an overnight flight too, no big deal. White X-Ray says, John, I love you. Thanks, White X-Ray, I love you too. Hello, FCST fan. I always stumble on your name. Andrew Titus, hi to you. What's up, Donovan? Thanks, Devin. Pumpkin spice, Colin. No way, man. Do I look like a college kid wearing like flannel or something? Okay, I kind of am wearing flannel almost, but I'm not about that pumpkin spice. Yeah, Greg is out of town. I don't think Arun is on, or Arun, I don't think Greg is on vacation. I think he's at the U.S. chess school, isn't he? I think he's teaching a U.S. chess school right now. He might be on vacation. But Greg did say he's going to be tuning in, so maybe expect to see him in the chat. No doubt he'll be saying some insulting things. Of late, he's taken to trolling me on social media, so we'll fully expect Greg to get in a few weak zingers like he usually attempts to do. John Bartholomew, will you make it to the meetup in London? What's the meetup in London? Is that a Chess Bra meetup? Is Eric hosting something? Yeah, if so, I'll see if I can show up. I'm friendly with Eric Hansen, the Chess Bra. I like watching his stuff from time to time. Ah, so Greg is on vacation. Okay. All right, let's check out board 3. See what's going on in Feingold versus Roseman. So this was the game where it seemed to me like Feingold had some prep because of how specific this f3 and e4 idea is. Notice all that pawn tension in the center. And this is not a position I'd like to be unsure of what to do in for either side. I mean, if I was white or black. It's just so volatile and there's so many possible exchanges going on in the middle. I wouldn't want to be caught outside of my comfort zone. Okay, so bishop b5 happened. They traded on c6. There's a trade on f5. Okay, so safe to say Roseman is out of book. I mean, he's been slowing down a little bit. Doesn't look like Spencer Feingold has slowed down at all. He's got almost the same amount of time he started with. Queen d2. So now he's fully developed, and all he has to do is figure out which side of the board he wants to castle on. I think for Roseman, it's going to be important to like survive the next 10 moves. And if he can get into a position where his bishop pair matters and he stabilized things, then I think that long-term trump of the bishop pair will come in handy. But can he get to that point? That's the thing that remains to be seen. I think this is a line that White's playing where they're hoping to score a quick knockout. It doesn't look that dangerous for Black yet, but I could see if White gets a few more moves in, like maybe something could happen. Although if Black were to play like, I don't know, let's say just Bishop E7 followed by Castle Short, like how is White really gonna tear this thing open? It almost seems like White needs a pawn break to really do any damage. Maybe they'll try some combination, like say Bishop E7 is played of Bishop takes F6 and D takes C5. Maybe just go for a pawn, try to win a pawn. I somehow don't think that's his idea, though. It seems like that pawn would be easily recovered with a move like Queen A5. So if Bishop E7 is played and White castles one way or the other and Black does the same, how is White really going to demonstrate that they have an initiative, really? Because long term, I like this position for Black. I think you got to prefer that pair of bishops. All right, and let's check out board 4. Nakata versus Rosenthal. So this is where I was kind of criticizing White's opening choice a little bit with that H3 move, because I'd never seen that before, and in my eyes, that doesn't really make sense to try to force Black to carry out one of their Shigorin threats anyways, taking the knight on F3 and doubling your pawns. Okay, so that said, I mean, Nakata is playing quickly and confidently. Just played Bishop B5, pinning the knight on C6. Black went Queen D7, making sure that if White takes, he can always recapture with the queen. Yeah, it's interesting because in this line, usually it's Black who's playing for dynamic play and looking for those possibilities with active pieces. Whereas here it seems like White is doing that. Like White is accepting a damaged pawn structure and they're already playing a pinning move, Bishop B5. Whereas it looks to me like Rosenthal will just be happy to complete his development and try to exploit these pawn weaknesses in the long run, especially that isolated pawn on D4. That's going to be a target for Black's pieces. So a little bit of a role reversal compared to what you usually see in this type of line. Okay. Go back to that Nizhnik game. Nizhnik did play knight H3. So developing, and yeah, I think he wanted to avoid playing knight E2 because he doesn't want to block that light square bishop. I mean, I think that's the purpose of knight H3 versus knight E2. It's debatable how well placed the knight would be on F4. But I think I like what he's doing. I like the way he's developing for now. So let's say hypothetically White were to take on F6 soon. Black would have to take with the G pawn, it seems to me, because if Bishop takes F6 and Black takes with the queen, then White could trade queens and then take on D6. And unless Black demonstrates some clear compensation, looks like White's just going up a pawn in that line. And the B3 square is a little bit weak for White, so White will have to watch something like knight A5 and into the B3 square. So I'm sure that's something that will be on Nizhnik's radar. But that is an interesting aspect of the position, that White may capture on F6 and Black may have to respond with G takes, potentially damaging their king. Like if Black were to castle short right now, I wonder if Nizhnik would just make that capture on F6, force Black to take with the G pawn, and then go about trying to exploit that weakness, like maybe knight F4, knight H5, that sort of thing. Interesting position, says Andrew Titus. No E4 games. There was one E4 game, Andrew Titus. It is, all right, I got it right. Izoria versus Jacobian, this game. So this was a French defense. So not all D4 games this time around. John, the bishop pair may be good long-term, but don't you think White should be fine due to Black's poor structure and difficulty actually utilizing the bishops? I assume you're talking about the Rosenthal game. So let me go to that one. It's always like the game that I don't click. Okay, so it's this one. Yeah, so to look at your comment again. I mean, I'm a more positionally inclined player, so By default, I kind of already like Rosenthal's position because I feel like white is the one who's going to have to prove that they have compensation for having wrecked their pawn structure a little bit. I mean, if you compare this situation with white having the bishop pair to that Isoria Akobian game, in that game, so this one right here, Isoria hasn't had to accept any structural flaws in order to obtain the bishop pair. Like he's got the two bishops, but he hasn't had to compromise his structure in any way to get there. So the positional implications of what Nakata did versus what Isoria is doing here, I think, favor black in the Nakata game. I think Rosenthal will have an easier time of exploiting that structure, and he has something he can more readily point to as compensation for having given up the bishop pair. So in my mind, that's the difference between these two. Like Rosenthal can already say, like, white has weak pawns, so the fact that I don't possess the bishop pair is fine by me. I'm going to attack your weak pawns later, specifically d4. Yeah. Let me know. Let me know if Lily acts up. I hope Lily is not in a trolling mood today. Just kidding, Lily. I know you're going to be good. Yeah, I really hate to police my stream, guys. There are a couple people who are mods who will, if push comes to shove, lay down the hammer in the Finn stream, but I really hope it doesn't come to that. I'm not big on censorship. I don't want to exclude anyone, but just use your head. I mean, don't spam the chat. Don't like say things that you wouldn't say in real life to someone. Alex says, see you on Lichess, John. Thanks for doing this. Yeah, thanks for tuning in, Alex, if you have to leave already. Scandy is my backup bullet opening. Andrew, it should be your main opening. It shouldn't be your backup opening at all. Hey, Shattuck, how's it going? Good to see you checking in here. What is John's opinion about the Scandy in regards to engine analysis? It goes to like plus 0.8, usually after the first 3 moves. Yeah, I don't think you can put too much stock in what the engine says in early on in openings, especially if there's theory that has been accumulated in those openings. The engine is never going to be like super reliable in an opening unless there's something like very concrete going on. But there's a lot of like mainline openings where you can sick the engine on it, and it's going to tell you something completely different from what the theoretically accepted conclusion of the line is. Probably the most vivid example of that is the King's Indian. Check out some of the main lines of the classical King's Indian, and this is well known. The engine like vastly prefers white over black in some of the main lines. In fact, like if you were to look at the King's Indian just with an engine alone, you would say, why does black ever play this crappy opening? Like, isn't this like losing by force for black? Like play through some of Nakamura's victories in the King's Indian and just watch the eval. Like the engine will say like Nakamura's just losing for like the first 20 moves, and then suddenly he like whips up an attack and just mates white's king on the king side. That's like a good example of why the engines are sometimes just wrong in the opening. I'm not going to say that the engine isn't sometimes correct about the Scandy, and I do think with perfect play, like white can probably hope for an advantage against the Scandy. I think I would be kind of crazy to say otherwise. But I also think the Scandy has maybe a slightly underestimated punch to it, in that it's been kind of brushed aside for many years, and in some of the lines, it's not that simple. And if you study it well for black, you can really surprise a lot of people. So, hey, John, why the name Fins? Fins is a song by Jimmy Buffett that I was listening to when I registered this account. That's the great story behind it. There's no other reason my name is Fins. It's just one of those things, like I used Fins to create one username, and I kind of had my identity attached to that, so now I'm stuck with Fins, which I don't mind. I mean, it could be a lot worse, right? Engines really like space, says Mark. Yeah, that's true. I think in the algorithms that a lot of these engines have, it can sometimes even overestimate the space advantage. Is Greg in here? Has Greg showed up in the chat? In the King's Indian, isn't the reason for poor engine evals due to the attack being extremely long-term, which makes it hard for them to evaluate move by move? Yeah, and also the space disadvantage, which the last poster touched on. Yeah. Okay, let's keep going. We just got an exchange here. So Nakata exchanged on c6. That's interesting to me because a move prior, he just preserved that bishop pair. And then when Rosenthal played knight b6, attacking the bishop on a4, he said, okay, let's trade. And possibly he missed knight b6 because knight b6 uncovers the queen's attack on d4. So not only is it hitting the bishop, but also the queen is participating in the attack on this pawn. So if he were to play like bishop b3 or bishop c2, he would just lose that pawn. So bishop takes c6 was played, and yeah, I got to be honest, I don't know. I really think white has to do something pretty active here. Otherwise, we're looking at maybe a longer term disadvantage for white just based on that structure. Like now white doesn't have the bishop pair. Probably they're going to try to go rook c1 and attack down the c-file. If Rosenthal gets a few more moves to consolidate, he's going to be better, I think. It's probably not too bad at the moment, but we'll see how Nakata treats this. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to not use engines during my commentary tonight. I think I'm going to be pretty much sticking to that rule. I think it's much more interesting for you guys if I don't use an engine. And I know people have various opinions about this, but if you're tuning into someone for commentary, especially like a title player, you don't really want to hear what the engine has to say about the position. You don't want to hear what the title player is regurgitating as far as what the engine believes. You want to hear what that person you're listening to thinks. So to make it the most interesting and the most instructive, I'm not going to load the engines on any of these positions. So, all right, let's go back. What can we find out here? Okay, Lenderman and Nizhnik again. All right, so Lenderman just played h6, and Nizhnik did not take on f6. So he spurned the possibility that I mentioned of taking on f6 and maybe trying to play against that pawn and just retreated. There might be a concrete reason for that. Maybe he just likes the pin. Maybe he's going to wait till black castles to take on f6. I think that's a strong possibility. You kind of wonder where white's going to go with the bishop on h4 and the knight on h3, because if white were to include the knight in the game with knight to f4, they would run into g5. Maybe Nizhnik's just going to put the knight back on f2 and possibly try to bring it to e4 or g4 later. That could be his plan. Maybe also he wants to keep the dark square bishop because he's going to put it like on g3 on the h2 b8 diagonal and attack d6. I could certainly envision that happening as well. All right. Izoria Akobian. So Akobian popped the queen out to a5. That threatens b4, followed by winning the a2 pawn after white's knight moves. So Izoria played a standard move, king b1, overprotecting a2, so that after b4 and the knight moves away, he doesn't have to worry about that pawn being lost. And then Akobian went right back. An appreciable time differential on this board already. Akobian's up 20 minutes. Just my feeling is Akobian's like very familiar with these positions already. I mean, being ahead 20 minutes as black is pretty nice, and Akobian knows quite a bit about the French. So I think this is looking pretty good for St. Louis already. Feingold Roseman. So black developed the bishop to d6, and white responded by castling short. Okay, and white probably spent the most time on that move than they have on all the other moves combined so far. Because all the way up through here, queen d2, we were seeing Feingold play very quickly. And all of a sudden, he paused to think a little bit before castling short. Maybe just debating like which way to take his king. So he's going to go short. I don't know. I really don't see too much wrong with black's position right now. I think if he castles short, it's looking fine for him. Like I said, I think white's going to have to do something drastic to prove that his development edge really means anything. I mean, black's already got his king to safety. How is white going to create problems? I predict white will take on c5 and then maybe play, well, king h1, and then somehow like try to attack this pawn structure, like maybe knight a4 and c4, something like that. Black's position is too reliable for white to tackle it by brute force with the pieces. I think white's going to have to look to their pawns at some point and probably get these knights working in more closer coordination than they are now to attack black's position. Tony says, Akobian is a real glutton for punishment. The French every game against e4. Well, he occasionally plays like the Philidor. I've seen him play e4, d6. Actually, I've seen him play a lot of d6-based systems, even against d4. Like, I had a game against him one time as white. It went d4, d6, knight f3, bishop g4. So that line's a little offbeat, but yeah, you're right, though. He mostly does play the French. Big French expert. John, isn't the backward pawn on c6 a liability? Yeah, maybe, but how does white get at it? I mean, yes, this pawn is a weakness, but first of all, I think these pawns are going to get exchanged off, and black will no longer have double pawns. But how is white realistically going to attack this pawn? That's what I wonder. I mean, knight coming to d4 would be the obvious answer, but a knight on d4 is not going to be stable. It can be chased away, and if black is able to get the d and c pawns rolling together in the center, he could push white back. John, I'm learning a lot from your channel. The last time we played, I was 670 rating, and I've gone up to 1300. Thank you for your videos. Brofist. Cool. Yeah, thanks, John. I'm glad to hear that you've been improving, and yeah, honored that some of your improvement maybe has come from my videos. Ooh, Sam Shanklin. If you want to talk about gluttons for punishment, think about guys who play the Scandinavian every game. See, Sam, that's just uncalled for. And for those of you who don't know, Sam Shanklin is one of our most promising young grandmasters here in the U.S. So for him to come on my stream and just throw a barb like that against a lowly international master, I take that a little personally. No, just kidding, of course. Sam is a cool guy. Yeah, we've never played a Scandinavian, have we, Sam? I don't think, well, you and I haven't played for a very long time. But I know that people will be of that opinion, that playing the Scandi is just asking for a bruising, cruising for a bruising. But I'm on a mission to disprove that. John, is it true European players are more cultured in openings and tend to know more different ones? I've heard this theory before that European players are just more cultured in chess in general. To be honest, I don't think that's really the case anymore. Maybe in certain respects, the professional climate of chess that you find in Europe is better than the one we have here. I mean, I think there's no doubt that there's a lot of advantages to being a professional chess player in Europe versus a professional chess player in the US, at least from a playing perspective. And maybe that translates to some cultural advantage too. But for your average player, I think with the internet and all the resources that you have available online, it's much more of a level playing field. I mean, so like an 1800 in Germany and an 1800 in Canada, I mean, I don't really think there's much of a difference. White X-Ray has declined 250 points, according to his comment in watching my videos. John, when do you leave for London? Tomorrow, actually. Tomorrow night. So about 24 hours from now, I leave. Yeah, and I'm going to be there tomorrow through December 14th. So actually, the past few days, it's been an all-out blitz for me to get some of the YouTube content done, so you guys have some stuff to watch while I'm gone. And I'll be trying to do my live streams while I'm there as well. All right, so we do get an exchange on d4 in this one. C takes d4, and probably Feingold will recapture with the knight. I wonder, if knight takes d4, is Rosman just going to play something like maybe queen c7, simply defending c6 and attacking the h-pawn? Could he get away with c5? Knight takes d4, c5. Allow knight c6? Maybe. Probably not, though. I get the sense that after knight takes d4, he's just going to play something simple and sound to defend the pawn, like queen c7 or bishop d7, and just proceed from there. Okay, let's keep moving here. Go look at some other games. Nizhnik Lenderman still on that same move. Zoria Kobian also still in the position after queen c7. And what about the Rosenthal-Nakata game? So Rosenthal played bishop d6 in response to bishop f4. Yeah, sensible. He says, let's swap these bishops. So the trades should favor black because the more pieces that he can exchange, the more potential he kills off for white to come at him, and the weaker that pawn on d4 gets. So I think if bishop takes bishop, queen takes d6 in reply, black's hoping to castle, maybe even queenside. He might not even go kingside anymore if there's a trade of bishops, and try to attack that d4 pawn. I'm wondering if white can sneak in d5 anywhere. I mean, white might want to play d5 and just offload the pawn for an initiative. In fact, let me try something. Okay, so now I've pulled up an analysis board. As you can see, it says examining. So this is not the active board, but we can look at the games, and I can copy the PGN directly from the games and kind of look at some possibilities. So with bishop d6, black is offering a trade, and let's say the bishop trade were to occur. So take and queen takes. I think black can be pretty happy because they have lots of ways to continue pressuring that pawn, especially with a rook coming to d8. So I'm kind of wondering if white could get away with doing something like d5. It's kind of crazy, but that pawn is going to be such a liability. I think if white could offload it in exchange for some activity, he'd like to do that. So like one hypothetical line, knight takes d5, knight takes d5, queen takes, pawn takes, and then just swap the bishops. And white is down a pawn temporarily, but these pawns are terrible. And something like rook fd1, go win this pawn back. Maybe white's going to get out of danger. I mean, you hate to have to pull the emergency brake like this as white this early on. I mean, usually with the white pieces in the first 10 to 20 moves, you're looking for that edge and trying to find a way to pressure your opponent. But, I mean, white might want to take a step back and realize he doesn't have the greatest position here already. It might be possible to do something like this. And if pawn were to take, like I'm thinking rook e1 check, and at least you can disturb the black king and maybe get some play. I mean, how much play white has in a position like this, I'm not sure. Maybe here and try to come after d5. Somehow it seems kind of suspicious, even this. Or maybe rook here, I don't know. Kind of indirectly defending the pawn. But that's what I would be thinking about as white. What do you guys think? Any thoughts or feelings about how white should treat this? Because I think if he just swaps the bishops, that's a position Rosenthal is going to be very happy with. Maybe you could swap the bishops and then play like knight e4, knight c5. But even a move like queen d5 looks all right. If the knight comes here, the queen is defending b7 anyways, so big deal. If knight back to c3, maybe queen d7, just escape the attack from the knight. And like I said, I think black would probably castle queenside if they could and just attack d4 and tuck their king away. Sam says, black is much better after rook d7 and rook a c8. Don't know if you're referring to this game. Jan says, this might be even better than Monday Night Football. Ah, that's a high bit of praise right there, Jan. Thank you. Monday Night Football is like the holy grail of American mainstream media. So if I can compete with MNF, then I'm doing something right, I guess. I think Magnus has been playing bad lately because Maurice Ashley's data head has been stealing his knowledge to increase his engine powers. I'm not going to comment on that. All right, well, let's continue looking at some stuff. We'll come back to this game as things develop. Okay, that's interesting. When I examine a game, it actually kills off the other games. It makes it so you're not looking at the other games in the live setting anymore. So let's fix that. Okay, so here's Nizhnik Lenderman again. So after bishop h4, Lenderman just dropped the bishop back to a8. And here's where that rook b8 move from earlier shows its logic, because now the rook has an open file. Black's attacking b2. Also, they have influence on the b3 square, so maybe like knight a5 to b3 in the future is an idea I've mentioned. Yeah, I'm sure there's some subtleties in these positions that I don't quite understand myself. I mean, just eyeballing it, I still like Nizhnik's chances. I think he's better, but I know that these positions can be tricky to play sometimes. I'm wondering how this whole pin on the knight is going to play out. Like, that's my biggest question about how the play will proceed from here. Like, is white going to take on f6? Are they just going to play like knight f2 and then try to bring the knight up to further pressure black? Will black castle short? Stay tuned on As the Chess World Turns. Yeah, I don't know. This is going to be a good game to study, I think. Let's go to Izoria and Kobian. Oh, actually, let's look at this one again while we're here. So actually, Nakata did something similar to what I was looking at. So he exchanged the bishops on d6 and then played knight e4. So he passed up the possibility of the pawn d5 move, and instead is attacking the queen. Black went to d5. Nikki has studied the Scandinavian well. He knows that the queen belongs on d5, a very important post for the black queen. And then rook c1, attacking the pawn and also gaining influence on c5. And Rosenthal just castled queenside. Okay, so he's attacking the d4 pawn. So now I think it would make sense for white to play queen c2. Attacking c7, threatening queen takes c7 mate, and not worrying about the d-pawn anymore. I mean, he doesn't want his queen defending the d-pawn anyways, so queen c2 would be perfectly logical. But I think on queen c2, probably we're going to see pawn c6 and maybe black making some more defensive moves just to try to consolidate his position. I mean, in Nakata's defense here, I could see his knight coming to c5 with a powerful effect in the future. Maybe he can even thrust the a-pawn down the board and go like a4, a5 and chase away that black knight. So it's not like castling queenside is all roses for black. Like, there may be some repercussions as far as his king safety goes because he's decided to castle that wing. Yeah, queen c2, and I think he'll play c6 because rook d7 would run into knight c5. Actually, maybe black could go like rook d7, knight c5, rook e7. And in doing so, like, he doesn't make another pawn move on the king side. So maybe rook d7, knight c5, rook e7, prepare the other rook to come over to d8, and just not push c6, because c6 is actually a little bit weakening. I don't know if black wants to do that. A rule of thumb I've kind of found in positions where you're getting attacked, like your king is getting attacked on a wing, is it's okay to push like one pawn sometimes. Like, black has already pushed their a-pawn, that's fine. But once you start pushing like two pawns or more, that's when a lot of weaknesses can creep in, because by definition, in pushing those pawns, you're bringing them closer to your opponent's pieces, right? So your opponent's going to be able to clash with those pawns much easier, and you're like oftentimes like gifting them an opportunity. That's why in positions like, let's say you have castled on one wing and your opponent is pinning your knight with a bishop on that same wing, like, you might play like a rook pawn move to attack that bishop, but when they retreat and keep the pin, like, you're not feeling so good about playing the knight pawn up forward to like h6 and then g5, because then you're moving two pawns and you're really compromising your king safety. So I think Rosenthal's going to have to think hard about whether he wants c6 to be played. And actually, I mean, he's got less than 40 minutes now. Nakata's got a 20-minute time advantage. So credit to the younger player for not freezing up in his first USCL championship appearance. Okay, here's the Feingold versus Roseman game. So we had an exchange of pawns on d4. C takes d4, queen takes d4, rook b8. Yeah, Roseman just attacking the pawn on b2. Yeah, you're right, Andrew. Nakata versus Rosenthal has changed a lot. Yeah, there's been a big shift in that game. And actually, that game is probably the easiest one to understand right now of the 4 games in progress. So that's why I was kind of spending a little more time on it. Goodbye to you, Devin. Thanks for checking out the stream tonight. Appreciate you coming on. Yeah, so Roseman just playing rook b8 and attacking the pawn on b2. He probably reasons that Feingold doesn't want to put the pawn on b3 because that weakens the knight on c3. It does take a pawn off an attack square, but I mean, maybe even rook b4 could be handy for black in the future, supported by the bishop on d6. So I think a good move, rook b8. I'm a little surprised that white took with the queen on d4. I mean, the more consistent move would be knight takes d4, trying to improve the prospects of that piece and attack the pawn on c6, but maybe Feingold just saw that as a dead end. Yeah, I'm liking black here. I would take black's position in this game. I just don't see these 2 white knights causing much damage. And I think that's kind of the key for white. He's got to get these knights working. All right, so queen c2 still played there. Ooh, what is going on here? Okay, fireworks happening, guys. Bishop a8, and then Nizhnik played knight f4. So earlier I was talking about how knight f4 might be unplayable because of g5, forking the bishop and the knight. But Nizhnik is like, whatever, I'm a GM. I play knight h5 and attack the knight on f6. And if you take me, I'm taking that rook down on h8. So therefore, Lenderman played e5. Let's take a look at this one. So now I'm in examine mode. Yeah, in just glancing at this position, I just assumed that knight f4 was not really playable, but that was incorrect. I didn't notice this tactical nuance that after g5, knight h5 is possible. And the point, as I just described, is if black takes the knight, then
Check.
queen takes h8, check, and white is doing fantastic here. So certainly Lenderman saw that knight h5 was going to be the answer to g5. This guy's a GM. I mean, that's par for the course for him that he saw that. And now, since that knight is pinned and he needs to protect it a little bit better, he played e5 to block the queen from coming in and attacking. And e5 also puts another pawn on a dark square, so I think positionally that's desirable in playing against that bishop on h4. So good decision. I mean, now we're probably going to see an exchange of knights, and white will be backing this bishop up. f2 or g3, I don't know exactly which square is better. Let's say g3. Maybe if f2, since this bishop's on an undefended square, maybe black could play something like g4 at some stage. So let's say bishop g3, and maybe black will end up castling. d6 is now reliably protected. I think this is maybe a positive turn of events for Lenderman. I somehow like black's position more now that e5 has been played.
Check.
And maybe a pair of pieces comes off the board, and white's bishop pair isn't looking as promising as I initially thought. Maybe Nizhnik's going to try for something like f4 and try to open the position using his pawns as a way to prove that the bishop pair is actually worth something here. If ever this pawn leaves e3, though, say take, and let's say white were to take with the pawn. I think that's actually an inferior move. Probably bishop takes is stronger, because note that black cannot take here due to the queen being lost. But say that line were to occur, and white takes with the e-pawn. Well, big problem. The pawn on e3 was protecting that vital d4 square, and if black gets a chance to play knight d4, they get just a monster piece that white is going to have to jump through hoops to remove, basically. Yeah, I don't think this is what Nizhnik wants at all. So, dynamic game going on. Let me go back to that one and just see. Yeah, Nizhnik's still thinking, but I mean, does he have any reasonable alternative to knight takes f6 check? Because if he moves the bishop, like now black will take the knight. Knight g7 check, black's just going to play king f8 and attack that knight. So I kind of failed to see what other move he would be thinking about other than knight takes f6. Sometimes players like to have their next move in mind. So like before he plays knight takes f6, he'll calculate knight takes f6, queen takes f6, and then what he's going to play after that, just so he doesn't have to start thinking again. I don't know that it really matters too much, but maybe that's what he's thinking about. Tactical Eye says, wasn't John going to do dual commentary with Greg? No. Sorry if you got that impression from my announcement. Greg is not available tonight, and he asked me to do the commentary, so yeah, it's just me on my own. I was thinking about maybe trying to get some people on Skype. I'm hoping my voice is going to hold up for the entirety of this stream. I may have to take a break at some point. We'll see. Salamander, this has been going on about an hour now. And we started a little after 7 Central Time, US Central Time, and it's a little after 8 now. Bishop g3 and h4. Yeah, Shreyan, I think that's a way that white could play it. Like swap the knights and then play bishop g3 and try to lever open the position with h4. But in that case, I think even black just leaving the pawns as is and castling kingside. Lenderman's got some serious play down the b file if he's able to coordinate his rooks. So I would be on the lookout for something like that to happen. I like what Lenderman's doing with his pawns. I mean, this is fundamental. This is a good learning concept for you guys. You know, in the Nimzo Indian, a lot of times, since black is parting with that bishop, by playing bishop b4, they're showing a willingness to trade the bishop for the knight. And one of the key concepts in the Nimzo is putting pawns on dark squares to compensate for that bishop. So he's kind of shoring up those dark squares and saying, like, I don't mind the fact that I don't have a dark square bishop because I'm going to throw a bunch of pawns in your way. And they're going to be defended pawns too. In fact, International Master Christoph Selecki, like in his book, he proposes like a dark square strategy in his book on the Nimzo and Bogo Indian. You know what Nizhnik is maybe thinking here is something like knight g7 check, king f8, knight f5. Let's look at that. So maybe he's considering this. And now he's got 2 pieces on pre, but after knight f5, he's attacking d6. So if he takes here, then rook takes d6, and should that queen, which is now attacked, move, then rook takes f6 is possible. Could black play knight d7 here, though? And save the knight and also defend? Looks like he could. h6 is kind of loose, and there's a pin here, but maybe. Let's say something like queen d2, attacking here. Yeah, actually, that's kind of awkward for black, because if rook b7, trying to defend, now the bishop is no longer defending the knight on c6. So take here. Okay, so perhaps that's the alternative that Nizhnik is considering, and why he's not just instantly playing knight takes f6. He's maybe thinking about this possibility. As weird as that looks. It's kind of cool. I mean, if he could force black to play something like knight e8 to defend here, then absolutely white would want to go for this line, I would think. Black's king has been forced to move. White retains their knight as well, and has forced black to play a defensive move. So I think the evaluation of this kind of depends upon whether black has something here to win material. Maybe something like queen d7, attacking the knight. Not taking the bishop yet, so that if rook takes d6, he can take f5. Yeah, there's some stuff to consider. Okay, so let's go to board 2 now. Zarya Jacobian, not much has happened. Wow, look at this maneuver. So after queen c7, Zarya came up with the creative plan of playing knight g1, undeveloping the knight. And then I assume he's going to bring it out to f3. Yeah, knight g1. This is a type of move This happens a lot in chess, actually. Like, if one of my students were to play this move, I would probably criticize them for it. But since Grandmaster Izoria is playing it, it looks like it has a deeper reasoning behind it to me. So sometimes the person commanding the army, whichever side you're looking at, can get away with moves that look bizarre and counterintuitive because you just respect them as a player. So, yeah, I mean, if I were just to see this move knight g1 in a random game on Lichess or chess.com or ICC, wherever, I would probably just criticize it. But since a grandmaster is doing it, hey, maybe it's the best idea. So trying to reposition the knight and I assume get the light square bishop out to d3 as well. And the downside is knight e2, or knight g1 rather, is it's time consuming. Like, look at this. Like, Jacobian is coming with his A and B pawns, and white still hasn't ignited a pawn storm with these pawns. He's taking a lot of time to reposition his pieces. Like, all these moves, like move 13, bishop e3, retreating the bishop from d4, king b1, although that move probably was close to forced, knight e2, knight g1, knight f3. All of these are piece moves that don't further white's attack against black's king, in my opinion. So white's position still looks fine. I wouldn't suggest that white is worse here or anything, but is this the best way to meet black's activity on the queen side? I don't know. Doesn't seem like it to me. And also, look at that time. Big time advantage. Izoria is basically playing a rapid game from this point forward. 25 minutes and change left. Sam says, too chicken to criticize, Johnny. Knight g1 is unbelievably poor. Grandmaster Shanklin does not mince words. You heard it from him. Knight g1 is a Potser move. Izoria, what in the world were you thinking? How did you ever become a grandmaster? Is it really that bad, Sam? I mean, yeah, it looks like kind of bizarre to me, but it does improve the knight's prospects. So Sam is not above criticizing his fellow grandmaster. He's just going to tell it like it is. Yeah, Frederick asks a good question, Sam. So what would you have done if you were white? I mean, would you have played like h4 or something here? h4 makes sense in my eyes. Try to go h5 and maybe even swing the rook up to h3. Knight d4, also suggested by 20 Michael. I mean, maybe, but knight d4, moving the knight again, I don't know if that trade benefits white. Why isn't John playing in the finals? Was he unable to carry his team? We didn't qualify for the playoffs, the Minnesota Blizzard. Yeah, we came up short, unfortunately. Knight g3 is Negi's recommendation and is strong. White wins like every game after knight d4. Wait, so you're saying two different moves, knight g3 and knight d4? And by Negi, he means Grandmaster Parimarjan Negi, who wrote a couple of e4 repertoire books for Quality Chess, the publisher Quality Chess. And these are very high-quality books, as the publisher's name suggests. And yeah, those are probably the two books to buy if you're really interested in e4 theory and learning the theoretical ways to play certain lines. He recommends a pretty active repertoire, and Sam is referencing those books and what Grandmaster Negi's recommendations are. So knight d4 is the best move. So yeah, Sam is saying that this position is all theory, these first many moves. Christian says, John, it's great seeing your videos. Keep it vieitos, something like that. Thanks, Christian. So white has two bishops. That means he automatically wins because two bishops is the greatest combination in all of chess. Turtle Joe is exaggerating, but yeah, two bishops does not equal an automatic win. Sam says the point is to meet knight takes d4 with bishop takes d4, a5, bishop b5, bishop a6, bishop takes d7. And white goes b3, c takes b3, has queenside solid as ever. And then push the pawns, he says. Okay, well, that's worth taking a look at, as long as we have a lull here. So I think Sam is saying in this position, so after queen c7 on move 15, white should play knight d4. And then the comment has scrolled off my stream. And Sam is leaving. Thanks for showing up, Sam. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And we love to see good players coming in the stream and imparting their knowledge on us. So thanks for tuning in, Sam. So yeah, he was saying that this should be played, and then I think after a5, he was extolling the virtues of bishop b5 and eliminating this knight. So I guess like something along these lines, and now we have an opposite color bishop position where white might even play like a pawn b3 type move at some point and just lock down the queen side, make it hard for black to attack, and like start pushing the king side pawns. And I guess he's claiming, maybe paraphrasing Grandmaster Nagy, that it's just hard for black to make progress here because white defends a2. I could always see them putting a rook on d2. And yeah, white's doing fine in the king safety department, it looks to me. That bishop on d4 controls the vital c3 square, so black's not going to like pop a rook down to c3 at an unpleasant moment, and white's just going to go hog wild with their kingside pawn push. Yeah, that's a high level assessment of the position from Sam. I mean, I can't verify all that. I really don't know about these lines. I think if this timestamp is accurate, Izoria spent a lot of time before playing knight g1. Did he really spend over 20 minutes before playing that move? So he had 59, and then he had 33, so 25 minutes spent before playing knight to g1. I mean, given Jacobian's theoretical expertise in the French, like it wouldn't shock me if he was aware of Nagy's recommendation in those books and maybe had something prepared against that line. Some lines have been worked out to a decisive endgame advantage, Isaac. Mint H maybe is referring to some of the lines in that book. By the way, how many people do we have in the stream? Do you guys know? Can you put it up there? I can't check the number myself, but I'd be curious to know how many we've got watching right now. I'm pulling up the third board. Feingold versus Roseman. All right, so we left off here with black playing rook b8 and attacking the pawn on b2. Feingold played a3, which stops rook b4, so the black rook won't come up to b4 and attack the queen. And I think his idea is that if black takes on b2, he would have to reckon with knight takes d5, which, if you can visualize that position, would be a discovered attack on the rook on b2. So I bet Rosman didn't like that. So he just played c5. He attacked the queen. Queen d3, d4. Yeah, this is kind of the scenario I was warning that white had to be concerned about if those pawns start rolling in the center and pushing white around. Knight d5, and then Roseman just took the pawn on b2. Just snapped it off. All right, so black is up a pawn now. And white plays rook b1, offering a trade of rooks. So white is not taking on f6, even though he could do so and double up black's pawns. Like if knight takes f6 were played, black would have to play g takes f6. And then maybe bishop h6 or something. So Feingold doesn't see an immediate benefit to doing that. Instead, he's just going to offer a trade. Yeah, I don't know that much has changed. I mean, does white have compensation for the pawn? Maybe a little bit after the trade of rooks. Like he has the b file, but I don't know if that's going to offset a full pawn here. Maybe something like rook takes b1, rook takes b1, bishop e5. Helping to defend f6 and also attack the knight on d5. I could see that being good. Let's see. So if trade here, then black's queen is opened up on d5, and also the queen is helping to defend f6, so black might not even have to accept double pawns. I want to keep this bishop on c8 for now because that's defending a6. Like if black were to play this, then they might lose the a6 pawn, like take here, followed by just go grab that. But, you know, say they do this and then bishop e5. I don't see anything crushing white has. Nor do I see how white gets the pawn back. Maybe they can try this and this soon.
Check.
Like here, take, check
Check.
again. Okay, they might do this. This might be a line. King over, trade the bishops. Let's say black takes with the queen and then take here. Okay, so it may not be so simple. c5 could be weak in the end. c5 or a6. Yeah, so that could be something that could occur. Let's check out that board 4 game. We'll see how Rosenthal responded to the queen c2 idea. Yeah, so he played rook d7 in response to the attack on c7 and the mate threat. So that's because he knows that if knight c5 is played, he can always play rook e7 or maybe even rook d6 might have been possible. So instead, Nakata just defended the d-pawn, rook fd1, king b8, a4, and now h5. Wow, h5? Really? I don't know about h5. Why would you suddenly stab with the h-pawn? I mean, you're not getting anywhere with h4, so the only reason I can think to play this move is to try to lift the rook up through h6 and come over to g6. What is that move all about? I don't know if it's appropriate for black to just close their eyes to what white is doing on the queen side. I mean, a move like, something like rook c8 just visually makes more sense, although maybe they need the h-pawn defended. Maybe they're worried like knight c5 would attack the pawn on h7, so possibly they just want to advance it and get it off a attack square for the future. Benjamin says, Yasser is commenting in the STL, the St. Louis stream with Mike Kummer. It's too bad he didn't fly out to Minnesota to comment with John instead. Man, that would be awesome to get a dual commentary with Yasser going. By dual commentary, I mean both of us commenting together. St. Louis, if you're listening, feel free to hire me. I'm free next year for U.S. Championship. I can clear my schedule. Don't worry. You can get some variety from the Yasser, Jen, Maurice, Alejandro, that sort of lineup. Put in the YouTubers, man. I won't even charge you as much as those guys do. Just kidding. I think all those players do good work. They put on a lot of high-level broadcasts for St. Louis. John, when are you playing again versus Wrench? Danny and I probably won't play anytime soon just because I'm going to be traveling for a couple tournaments. But I'd say in January we'll pick up the Chess Rivals again. We might be able to get in a match or two when I come back after December 14th. Remains to be seen. We'll find out. Danny has also been playing Chess Rivals against other players. He's played Keaton Kira, my friend Keaton, and also Thomas Rendell from England. He's played him recently. Graphics says, I'd love to see John in St. Louis. Yeah, St. Louis is just awesome. Like, if you guys have never been to the chess club there, and you're a chess fan in the US or even abroad, like, put St. Louis on your chess bucket list. Like, that club is just, like, awesome. And I'd recommend going when they have a high-class event. Like, they had that Nakamura versus Caruana match recently. Also, the Hoi Fan versus Parimarjan Negi match as well. So yeah, go for something like that, or like U.S. Championships, and it's the best chess club in the country. They've got a lot of sponsorship. They really do things professionally over there. I've been to St. Louis probably 4 or 5 times for tournaments, and also I've done a U.S. chess school there before. I taught at that. John says, or Amir says, John, can I meet you when you're in London? Yeah, if you come to the tournament, you can see me there. I'll be there December 4th through 11th, the London Chess Classic. So Rosenthal just took this pawn on a5. Nakata said, here, take my pawn, and Rosenthal said, don't mind if I do. Queen takes a5. So what does white gain for giving up this pawn? I assume his idea is knight c5. Let's copy this one. So Nakata says, go ahead, be my guest, take that pawn. I assume the idea is this, attacking the rook and also eyeing b7. Let's say, how would he want to react to this? Because if the rook leaves the defense of c7, like let's say rook d5 is played, I'm wondering, I mean, there's moves like knight takes b7 that have to be calculated, something like
Check.
this. This, at minimum, leads to a draw for white. He's got like a perpetual check here, maybe even more somehow. But there's also just like simply knight b3 attacking the queen and also go win c7 next move. That also looks really strong. You know, something like queen b4, queen takes c7 here, or maybe king a7 is better. Knight c5, threaten mate. This pawn is also going to be loose. Knight c5 also stops rook d7. So I don't get the sense that Rosenthal is going to play the rook to d5 or some other square that doesn't defend this pawn. So probably he's going to come here. And does Nakata have compensation for the pawn? I mean, he could go and attack black's queen, but queen b5 and he's always snaking out. Maybe this is the idea, threatening mate. But a knight coming to d5 is always going to crush that dream. This is a great square for black's knight as a blockader. And maybe white can try to lift a rook and go attack b7. Maybe it's better for black to try c6, although that would allow queen e5 check with the fork on the king and the pawn. Maybe white can go off raiding black's king side while black's queen is far removed from the action. So I predict that's how Nakata's going to try to play it. I think he's going to go knight c5, and then if rook e7, play queen e4. Because otherwise I think it's going to be hard for white to prove compensation. But if he can get the queen-knight working together and possibly go win a pawn elsewhere on the board, he's going to have a good position. Probably the critical line is this, knight d5. Black just trying to prove that he can hold on to the pawn and defend. And here white would have to find some other angle for himself to create counterplay, like rook d3 and rook b3, as I was mentioning. Let's see. I'm going to go back to that game. Yep, there you go. Knight c5, rook e7 played. I still think this is like the most straightforward game we've seen so far, so that's kind of why I'm spending a little time on it. Kyle says, John, 221 watching. All right, that's pretty good. Yeah, over 200 people watching. Thanks to all of you guys for tuning in. We're about an hour and a half into the stream almost. John, when can we expect your next OTB analysis, and is it something you plan on doing regularly? Well, when I'm in London, I'll try to do some analysis of my games there, if time and space allows. I think I'll have enough time to do it. I'll actually have much more time in London than I had in Dallas, just because there's only one round per day. I may do some analysis of other games later if I can. We'll see. John, which is the other tournament apart from the one in London? I'm playing the North American Open in Las Vegas at the end of the year, Drove. That's December 26th through 30th, wedged in between Christmas and New Year's. Let's leave this one up. Go back to board one. Lots of action here. Lots of developments. Nizhnik and Lenderman. So after e5, Nizhnik declined to go down the knight to g7 check path, and instead opted for the exchange of knights, and then bishop g3. And Lenderman played king e7. Okay, so I was speculating like maybe black would castle here. That was just an offhand remark that maybe he would castle short, but he might figure that his king is safer in the center, and king e7 also helps to defend d6 and connect the rooks. So he decided that was his best bet. h4, Nizhnik looking to open lines. Rook b6, take. Pawn takes, offering a trade of rooks, and he does trade the rooks. That's probably a smart decision on white's part, because I mean, if he doesn't trade rooks, like say he were to play like bishop d3 or something, black would be bringing that other rook over to b8, and I don't believe white wants to deal with two rooks attacking down the b file. I think trading and trying to kill some of black's play is good enough, because here, black even found a way to get their queen involved. Queen b8, and the rook and queen are looking at b2. Also, rook b3 could be played in the future, maybe. I would expect that bishop c2 is the move that white would like to play now, stopping rook to b3. The king side is like completely open now. I mean, it's looking kind of shaky for black on that wing, to be honest. They've put all of their pieces on the queen side and left their king to its own devices on e7. I don't know that that's a cause for alarm yet. And probably white will be somewhat tied down to b2 with the black rook attacking it. But yeah, bishop c2 is what I would expect here. Cool, Gabriel. See you at the North American Open. It's a fun tournament. Hey, ChessCod. Yeah, this is an evening stream, so it doesn't conflict with your workday. Dimitri, that is Spencer Feingold. As Andrew said, that is Ben Feingold's son, Spencer. I think he's in his early 20s, maybe. Early to mid 20s. When are you going to take on 6-year-old Magnus? Really liking that series. Yeah. Yeah, I just have so many videos to record recently. I haven't played Magnus recently, but you never know. That could change. John, why don't you make a Facebook page? I might at some point. I haven't really seen a need for it at the moment, Matthew, but I might down the line. People are talking about math. Okay, let's go to the third board. Speaking of Spencer Feingold, here he is with white pieces against Levy Rosman. These guys both pretty close on time. White has just played bishop f4, offering a trade of the bishops. Black is still up a pawn, mind you, in this position. So what happened after we left? So we left when rook ab1 was played. So black offering a trade of rooks, or sorry, white offering a trade of rooks, and black accepting. And then this move, queen d7. That looks like a bizarre move, but I think he wants to get out of the pin. And even though he's putting his queen in front of the light square bishop, he is better defending f5 and escaping that bishop on g5. So Feingold then traded and now played bishop f4 and rook e8. Okay. So certainly white can claim some compensation now because of the damaged pawns that black has on the king side, those doubled f pawns. Still though, black is a pawn to the good, and if he manages to keep that pawn, I don't think the doubled f pawns are going to be that much of a concern. White doesn't have as many resources as earlier, so it's hard to envision white like launching an attack against black's king. So I still like Rosman's chances to consolidate this extra pawn and start turning the screws, start grinding Feingold down. Let's go to board 4 again. So Nakata still thinking about what to do after rook e7. Oh, let's go to board 2. Did we skip board 2? Yeah, I skipped board 2 when I was going through that. Izoria Akobian. See you later, Andres. Thanks, I'll do my best in England. Now, if I miss a question, by the way, because I'm just kind of going back and forth, glancing at the chat and the screen, feel free to ask it again without spamming relentlessly. What is the name of this London tournament? It's called the London Chess Classic. So if you Google London Chess Classic, you'll find the webpage. Maybe after this, I'll show you the site for it as well. And I'm playing in the FIDE Open. The London Classic is a super tournament. It's got all the best players in the world playing. I think something like 9 of the top 10. And I'm playing in the FIDE Open section that's associated with that. It's the same site and everything. And the section I'm playing in has a lot of grandmasters and IMs playing as well, so it'll be tough. So Izoria managed to trade the light square bishop. So he spent time with this maneuver, knight g1 to f3. Then he popped the bishop out to d3. They swapped. And then he played c takes d3. A conservative choice, but it makes sense because he wants to open the c file. Jacobian played a4, rook c1, queen b7. Jacobian doesn't want his queen on the same file as white's rook, so queen b7 just escapes that pressure, and now knight d4. It looks to me like Izoria is trying to play for more of a positional advantage versus attacking black on the king side. So many of these opposite side castling games wind up with one side just attacking the other and vice versa, and it's just like brutal hand-to-hand combat, like who's going to get there first. But I think Izoria is essentially saying, I respect your queenside play, So I'm going to try to trade down a little bit. Like here he's offering a trade of the knights and maybe guide this into calmer waters. This is a structure I actually talked about in a video recently. It's called the padlock. So with white having pawns on a2, b2, and black having pawns on a4, b4, white ensures that black cannot open the position any further than it already is. So let me show you what I mean by that. So even though black has made a lot of strides with these pawns, let's say black were to play a3. Because white has such a flexible structure, they don't have to take or allow black to take. That would just lead to open files. They can play b3 and ensure that these pawns stay locked and the A or the B file does not become open. And therefore, white has a higher degree of safety than they would if the position became open. Because if you're black here, you're loving it if you can open any more lines. I mean, black's got a clear jump on white in the attack, and white wants to do everything they can to keep the position closed. And by keeping these pawns back, white is employing the padlock and ensuring that the position doesn't open up. Yeah, I think Azoria is doing fine. I don't think black is worse or anything, but I like what Azoria is doing, especially with this time. Like, notice how big the time differential is. I'm going to open that board again so you can see. 16 minutes to 53. White is just really hurting on time, so trading a few pieces and not overreacting, not initiating sharp play, I think is the right call here. Turtle Joe, yeah, if you asked about the UT Dallas Fall FIDE Open, I finished with an even score there, 4.5 out of 9. Next player wants to know if in the Nakata game, if white goes crazy and plays b4 opening files for the rooks. Maybe he could do that. We'll take a look at that when we go back to that game. I mean, Nakata's already invested one pawn, so he might consider investing another one to try to open lines. John, how do they make sure there is no cheating in the league? Is it played online? Yes, so all these games are online, and there's some anti-cheating measures in place. So they actually have arbiters on site, so arbiters who've been certified by FIDE or the USCF to monitor the players in the games. I know for our team, the arbiter was always in the playing hall on site, so keeping an eye on things. And also, they have a lot of really smart people running these games through engines and statistical tools they have to tell if people are cheating. Because you can tell based on move quality whether someone is cheating. So there are measures in place to prevent that sort of thing. Would rook fc8 or rook fb8 make sense for a Cobian? I would say rook fc8 chess runner because, as I said, I don't envision the b file opening up, specifically because of that structure. So if the rook is going to go anywhere, either the a rook or the c rook, it's probably to c8. I mean, I think you could see mass exchanges down the c file. It wouldn't surprise me if both pairs of rooks eventually got traded there. And I had a game against one Greg Shahadi in our dual commentary match that proceeded along those lines. Like, Greg did something similar to what white is doing here. He took with his c-pawn at one point, opened the file, and even though he was castled queenside, he was able to kill a lot of my play by just trading rooks down the c-file. Squash Addict, if you Google my name, you'll find my FIDE profile. It'll probably be in the top 5 results for sure. Or just Google John Bartholomew FIDE. And then you can see my live FIDE rating. After this Dallas tournament, I think it's going to be like 24-42 or 24-43. I lost a few points at this tournament. Not many, but... Lily, I'm not going to get into that. That's... those were just allegations. I don't even want to touch on them because that's a very sticky subject. So nothing was proven, even though there was a cheating allegation made in the league. I want to say strongly that nothing was proven, and the official stance of the league has been that no cheating took place. So as such, I'm not going to say anything about that. That would be totally improper for me to even speculate. The physical board for Dallas updates work so well, John. I haven't seen any other chess YouTubers to do it like that when they are away. Great little format. Yeah, thanks. I brought one of my sets along with, so I could actually do live analysis while I was there, and it actually kind of worked out okay. Certain things could be better, like the lighting and the the time I had to make the videos. It was kind of a time crunch at all times. So I think I can improve it in some respects, but for being in the road in a small hotel room and never having done that before, I was using a camera I bought like the day before the tournament. I was really unsure how it was going to turn out. It actually was okay. So, all right. So this game I think is slowing down a little bit. Let's keep moving and looking at some other games. All right. Lalu, aka Arun Sharma, is asking me in the chat about Lili. All right, so Nizhnik, Lenderman. Let's see what's going on here. So we left off after Queen B8, and I was saying that Nizhnik would probably play Bishop C2, and he did. Yeah, so Bishop C2 guarding the B3 square. Queen C8, Rook over to H1. So Lenderman actually said, I'm not getting anywhere down the B file, so let's play Queen C8. And maybe look for some other place to put the queen, maybe to E6. I like White's position now. I mean, I think after Bishop C2, White has neutralized a lot of Black's play. And Lenderman maybe felt like he had annoyed White as much as he could on the queen side. So now he's trying to play elsewhere. But now Nizhnik sends the rook somewhere more useful. Rook H1. Maybe he can pop it to H5 and attack the G5 pawn, or maybe it's going to H7. Yeah, I'm liking White. I think White's got a small edge here. And if Nizhnik can open the position, watch out, because his bishop pair is going to be pretty strong. And I think there's more of a question mark surrounding Black's king than there is White's king at the moment. I think White's king is pretty safe. Nizhnik's got a time edge, too. 12, 13 minutes. Let's go to that third board. Feingold Roseman. Queen E6. Maybe playing around with Queen E1 ideas. It's not a threat yet. Queen E6, he also defends F5 and prevents Queen C4 check. So I would expect Feingold to want to make a luft move, like maybe H3, giving his king access to H2, something along those lines. Yeah. Again, I think White has some compensation here, but I definitely like Black's chances. I don't think White has shown enough for the pawn. Let's put it that way. There's some maybe nebulous compensation, but it's not. This position isn't clearly speaking to me that White has done enough to justify having lost a pawn. Time's still pretty even in that one. Okay, now we're going back to Nakata versus Rosenthal. John, your openings in the UTD tournament seem sharper than usual, especially in the Kali Zukertort with White and the Trump Benoni in the last round. Was it a conscious choice on your part? Hello to you, David, by the way. That's David is Flaneur, by the way, from the 1-minute tournaments, the Lee Chess tournaments. I saw a couple of people post comments like that to my videos and on Reddit and stuff that it seemed like I was playing sharper. In my opinion, I was just playing the position as the positions demanded. So I wasn't consciously trying to play sharper than usual. But like that line of the Kali, for instance, that I had against Gurevich, if you want to maximize your advantage in that line, you have to play it the way I did. That's a critical variation, and if White wants to get all they can out of that position, you got to sack the pawn. Anything else is kind of lame. Also, in the final round game against Injic, which was a really fascinating game, by the way. If you haven't seen my analysis of the game, I'd recommend you do so because it was a pretty cool game. It was fun. I won't spoil the result. But that one, maybe I played a little sharper. It was the last round, and I knew he was going to throw himself at me and try to create some chaos. So in a sense, I was okay with the decisive result in that game, and I wanted to try to beat the GM. So that game I might have played a little sharper than normal. But thinking of the other 8 games, I don't think I really did anything too out of the ordinary for my play. So here, Rook D8 was just played by Rosenthal. Yeah, I'm starting to think that the reason he played H5 was just to get the pawn off an attack square, so it wasn't in the gaze of that queen attacking from C2. So Rook D8 was played, attacking D4. I'm surprised by Rook B3. I really thought Queen E4 would be played. Because it seems to me like you're going to want to draw the knight to D5 anyways, so you can actually get at that pawn on B7. I'm sort of thinking about this in maybe less concrete terms than you should here, but somehow rook d3 doesn't seem as dangerous as the queen e4 move. Also, white loses the ability to play rook a1. a1 is unprotected now. Maybe white will play b4. That was actually a suggestion from the chat. Like, what if white plays b4? They could try it, but maybe black doesn't even take the pawn. Maybe they just play queen b5 and kind of sidestep the open line that white is trying to achieve. Nakata's got a 10-minute time advantage. I somehow still think black is going to survive in this one and consolidate the extra material. But Nakata is showing good confidence, not being afraid to go down a pawn. And I mean, with a4, a5, he's really going for Rosenthal's throat. I mean, he wasn't messing around with that. He didn't have to sack the pawn like that, but he did. All right. Spencer Feingold played h3 as predicted, so trying to create a space for the king. Mike says, John, did you follow the Komodo Stockfish TCEC match? Any thoughts on Komodo's victory? No, I didn't really follow it too much. I know those engines are pretty close in strength, but as I understand it, Komodo is a little bit stronger. Some of the games in the TCEC are fascinating. Just like go play through some of those games, especially from the good engines, because they do some stuff that you would never see in human games. And the length of the games is sometimes surprising. They'll have like 120, 150 move games. And one side might eventually win one of those games too. Turtle Joe, John, do you have a favorite chess game from history? I like Morphy versus the Duke. That's the first game I memorized in chess. It's a classic. Most of you have seen it, I'm pretty sure. Morphy versus the Duke of Brunswick, the Duke and the Count. A classic game illustrating the principles of the opening, quick development, controlling the center, getting your king to safety. John, on a scale from 1 to 100, how probable is it you're traveling to Norway chess next summer? Not even on my radar right now. I would say a 5 out of 100, unless there was a real strong reason for me to travel. It would have to be somewhere I'd really want to visit for me to justify making like a chess spectator trip, because otherwise you can follow everything online, and it's often easier to follow the stuff online. A good example of that was the recent FIDE World Rapid and Blitz in Berlin. Apparently, like, the venue wasn't that good at all. Like, you couldn't even watch the games live if you were there. They didn't have like a projection of the games or any demonstration boards or anything. But online, you had access to all the games live, like on the Chess24 website and ChessBomb and other places. So for chess spectating, especially if you're following a number of games, I think it's better to just sit at home and watch them. But if I was like commentating Norway chess, or I had a meetup arranged with Magnus Carlsen, then yeah, I'll go there. Oh, you live in Norway, Snyder? Okay, you can be my Norwegian tour guide. There's a lot of really nice people in Norwegian chess. I've happened to meet a number of people from Norway, and they're always friendly. What do you think about Wei Yi Bruzon? Do you consider it an immortal game? I thought it's a very good game. I think it's a little too early to say whether it's immortal or not. I know it immediately was branded with that designation. It's a very good game. I don't know. It'll probably go down as one of Wei Yi's best games. John, have you ever thought about playing a dual commentary match against Ginger GM? Yeah, I got to reach out to Simon. I just haven't talked to him at any length before. I don't know if I've ever spoken with him, actually. But I would love to do that. That would be fun. I played a lot of dual commentaries in the past few months, like the Chess Rivals, the matches with Nicholas, Christoph, Greg. All that has been played in the past 3 months or so. Okay, let's continue to other games. So Nizhnik Lenderman. Not much has happened. Nizhnik repositioned his bishop to e4. Looks like a good square for that piece. And then bishop b7. So I think both sides are kind of making improving moves right now. I was mentioning that I thought white had some inroads on the king side, but black does have everything pretty well together. Still, I think we're going to see something like rook h5 somewhere or rook h7 from Nizhnik. It's hard to believe he's really going to create chances to win without including this rook sometime soon. Or maybe playing for pawn f4 somewhere. Izoria Akobian. Okay, so black did advance b3. And just as I was describing, like Izoria definitely does not want to take. Like taking on b3 is absolute suicide. Black takes back and white's swiftly going to get mated on a1. So a3 has to be played practically to keep the position closed. There's too much stuff black has to throw at you on the queen side. And now knight b8 from Akobian. Maybe he liked Izoria's knight g1 idea from earlier. And he says, if you can do it, I can do it. No, but most likely he's just repositioning the knight to c6, and he feels the knight has better prospects there than it did on d7. And look at this time. I mean, Izoria has stabilized the position, but he's still way down on time. He's basically playing a blitz game now, and Akobian has plenty of juice remaining here. I mean, the good news for Izoria is that he has calmed things down. I mean, it's not a lifeless position by any means, but like white pretty much only has to concern themselves with the defense of the d-pawn and the c-file for now. I think there could be some long-term pressure on the white king. Like the virtue of having that pawn on b3 is that there may be mating nets even in very simplified material scenarios. Like even if all the rooks got traded off, for instance, white would always have to be careful that the black queen doesn't come in and just checkmate. And maybe this knight coming to c6 is going to disturb the bishop, and yeah, I mean, I could see Akobian pressing from here. My gut tells me white is absolutely fine. I mean, even if white did something like, let's say, rook c3, knight c6, queen e3, and just defended the bishop with the queen and prepared to double up the rooks, it's hard to believe black is going to generate anything significant after that. I think I still predict a draw in this game. I think the time advantage is only going to be relevant if Akobian can sharpen the struggle somehow. And I just see ways for Izoria to just shut this position down if he wants. But I don't know. I think that's dangerous for Manhattan because I think they'd really like to score in this game with a win. That would just be fantastic for them if they could do that. Akobian loves the French, boring Izoria to death. Ooh, all right. Well, g4. Izoria says, I'm not going to take this one laying down. I'm going to go for you. g4. He must have heard me. I was saying how he could just shut the position down and maybe he's okay with a draw. But no, g4. Good question, Piajenjik. Sorry, I just butchered your name. What happens if the match is drawn 2-2? Yeah, the US Chess League has a really cool tiebreaker format. And I was the manager 1 year for the Dallas Destiny. Actually, 2 years. We won the USCL championship in back-to-back seasons. In one of the years I was managing, we were in the finals and the match was drawn 2-2. So what they do is they have a blitz playoff. And they start with board 4 versus board 4. And they play a blitz game. And let's say one of the board 4s wins. Then that board 4 from the winning team faces the board 3 from the team that just lost. And you go right down the line. And you got to beat the entire lineup for the opposing team. So let's say this match is drawn. Rosenthal and Nakata would play a blitz game. Let's say Nakata wins. Then he faces, who's the board 3? Can't even remember. Spencer Feingold. He would face Spencer Feingold after that. And they would play, and so on. So that's a pretty innovative format. I haven't seen that outside of the USCL. So it'd be high entertainment if they actually drew. It would extend my job. We're going to be sticking around for a longer broadcast, probably. But that's what would happen in the case of a 2-2 draw. Mark is right. USCL games do have the tendency to go right down to the wire. I know this from being in the league for several years, but with this 30-second increment, you can really drag out a lot of these games. You might think they're over, and then the 30-second increment enables the sides to play on for another 20, 30 moves. And this is the final, so no one's throwing in the towel early. Often you'll see people in team events, they'll play on in positions where normally they would just resign. So if you get into a lost position and you're just playing for yourself, you're like, okay, well, I know I'm losing. Maybe I'll just give the game up, and especially if you have another game to play after that, just rest. But in a team championship, you're going to want to do everything you can for the team. So I recall a game I played against Irina Crush in the league when I actually played for the Manhattan Applesauce. And I was just busted. I mean, I was down like a piece or something. And I played on probably like 5 to 10 moves more than I would have if I was playing on my own, because you just want to see if you can make something happen for the team. And you want to demonstrate that you're fighting for every single half point, even the improbable ones. And who cares if you have to make your opponent play on a little bit more? They're not going to take offense. Robert says, so John, in the USCL, you do not play from home. No, you do not. No, you go to a central site. Like here in Minnesota, for the Minnesota Blizzard, we played at one of our chess clubs in Minneapolis. We all play from the same site, and there's an arbiter on site. Everyone's in the same building. There was a recent China-Russia match in that format. Karyakin beat the entire Chinese team by himself. Oh, is that actually the format for that match? I recall Karyakin destroying the Chinese players, but I didn't know it was that similar type of knockout format. John, are you a Vikings fan? Do you follow any sports? Not a huge Vikings fan. They're doing well this season, and I check the results, but I can't say I'm a diehard Vikings fan. Usually the Vikings are just disappointing every year, so... Ratchet, it's a name of a song I was listening to. I've already seen that question come up like 4 or 5 times this stream. Yeah, it's the name of a song I was listening to while I made the username. Yeah, the Manhattan Applesauce, it's a funny name. I mean, Manhattan is the Big Apple, right? So the USCL people in place said, why not name them the Manhattan Applesauce? It's more colorful than the New York Knights, which is also a New York City-based team. So NYC has 2 teams, and they both play in the city. The New York Knights and the Manhattan Applesauce. There's also the New Jersey Knockouts, which is not far away either. Gabe says, so after white plays d4, how does black get counterplay? Yeah, maybe that's Izora's idea. Pawn d4. So perhaps Akobian should play d4 himself now to ensure that that doesn't happen. Because I agree, I mean, well, maybe knight a5 to c4, actually. Because d4 would weaken that c4 square quite a bit, right? So perhaps he's going to sink the knight in. Yeah, someone else just mentioned knight a5 to c4. That's an interesting question. Like, should white play d4? Probably not. And therefore, black maybe shouldn't waste their time playing d4 to stop white from playing d4. I think Izuria is going to continue trying to push on the king side. Like right here, he looks secure on the queen side for now. Maybe he wants to invest those tempos and try to advance on the king side. Doesn't have a lot of time to figure it out. We're going to keep a close eye on this one. Over to board 4, Nakata versus Rosenthal. So Nakata has tripled up on the c-file. Not quite Alekine's gun, because the queen is in the middle of the 2 rooks, not behind the other rooks. And just to remind you of the material, this is the material count here, though I suggest not looking at that because it makes you kind of lazy. But black is up a pawn, and Rosenthal is hoping to consolidate. And actually with this move rook c3, Nakata is offering the pawn on d4, isn't he? But I think his idea is if rook takes d4, there's knight b3, forking the queen and the rook. So the backward knight move. So it doesn't appear like Rosenthal would want to take that. I just don't see many direct threats with rook c3. I still like black here. Time is also evened up a little more. Nakata burned some time figuring out what to do. Still liking black's chances to consolidate. Squash Addict? Yes, I can. Let's check board 1. Okay, so Nizhnik played rook h5, attacking the pawn on g5. So how is Lenderman going to defend? Nizhnik banking the time advantage as well. So 2 ways, queen f6 or pawn f6. Pawn f6 opens rook h7, so visually I think that would be unappealing to black. But maybe if there's nothing else. No, actually, if pawn f6, there's rook h7 check, the king moves, and then at the very least, white has rook takes b7. So let me show you what I mean. So if this is played to defend the pawn, check. King moves away, and take here. Get rid of that light square bishop, and then the knight is hanging here, and I think white's going to win this. 2 bishops against the rook. So does that mean that queen f6 has to be played? First of all, queen f6 is kind of awkward. I mean, you hate to have your queen defending a lowly pawn. And also, I don't know. Maybe there's a way white can attack this pawn again. I'm not seeing one right off the bat, but if white could bring their queen around somehow, like get their queen to g4, I know that takes quite a while, maybe they could do something. Or get the bishop attacking the pawn, but I fail to see how that would happen. Maybe something like bishop d5, trying to make way for the queen to come over. Black could always try to trade some stuff, though, with like knight d8, offering a trade of the bishops. So I think Lenderman is probably going to play queen f6. And Nizhnik will continue trying to open the position. That's my prediction for this board. So we're 2 hours into the stream, and we've still got all the games going. And some of them are coming down to the wire, you can tell. This is board 3, Feingold Roseman. Queen e5 attacking the knight on g3. Looks like a good move for black. Yeah, this knight is having a tough time finding a secure post. f4 is not possible. Black would just take it. Knight e2 can't be played. Black would just take the knight. Knight f1 looks terribly passive. So where does the knight go? h5? It's an active square, but if knight h5, there's pawn f4. So let me copy this game. If here, then f4, and this knight has been caught. Yeah, he can't go back to g3 anymore. He can't take on f4. He can't take on f6. You'd have to play like a desperation g4 to support the knight and then take something like this. Yeah, this is not what white wants at all. So I think white has trouble with this piece. If king h2 is played to support the knight, maybe even h5, trying to go h4. And if white plays h4 to stop that, I could see a move like this being unpleasant. Maybe white can do this, I don't know. But something about white's position smells. I don't like it. I think this knight has to find a better home. But Roseman looks in control. Yeah, Feingold's still thinking on that one. Have you considered doing a chess duel with real-time banter over Skype? Yeah, although personally, Steiner, I don't think that's as interesting as having the separate commentaries. Because if you're doing a dual commentary with someone who you're also just talking to, then obviously you can't like reveal what you're planning. So such a video would be mainly for entertainment purposes. There wouldn't be a lot of instructional value, in my opinion. I know Simon Williams has done that a couple times. Like I think he played Badur Jobava and also Daniel Gormali, an English grandmaster, and they use that format. But I personally don't think that's nearly as interesting. Tony says Roseman's position looks really excellent. White is probably losing most of the time. Yeah, I agree, Tony. I don't like White's position at all. There's no semblance of coordination among the white forces. Specifically that knight. And black's bishop hasn't even had to show its power yet. And it's very possible black will eventually activate this piece, like maybe play bishop e6 to d5, and white's getting pushed back here for sure. The parentheses mean the material count. So that means black has 23 points of material, if you counted the value of the pieces. White has 22, so black is up a pawn in this case. Let's go look at some of the other boards. That one is still ongoing. Black's still thinking about what to do after rook h5. Other alternatives that I'm missing here, because it seems to me like black has to defend it. I mean, maybe if rook takes g5 is played, Lenderman is thinking about ways to play queen h6 and attack the rook and also threaten queen h1. Maybe that's what he's considering. So whether he can get by without defending the g-pawn. It would be kind of surprising, and white is not obligated to take the g-pawn. But maybe that's what Lenderman is pondering right now. Rosenthal played rook c8, overprotecting the c7 pawn. All right, so how is white going to increase the pressure in this game? He's got his pieces on the right wing. I mean, he's going all out on the queen side, but black knows that c7 is a weakness, so he's taking a lot of precautions to defend there, and correctly so. I think this game could come right down to it. I still like the look of queen e4. I think Nakata should throw that move in and attack b7 and try to force black to play either c6, the weakening move, or knight d5, which might open up the rook b3 avenue. Yeah, queen e4 just seems like the best way to develop the attack. So look for him to try that. Wow, Feingold played f4. Thought for a second about that move. So I think the idea with f4 is to entice queen takes f4 and then play rook f1. So let's see how that would turn out. So queen takes f4 and then rook f1. Attacking the queen, and now the white queen is defending the knight. But if black were to play, I mean, even simply like this move, let's say, offering a queen trade, how does this work out for white? Looks like a queen trade is forced, because if he plays queen c4 check, there's bishop e6, and white has a queen hanging and also a knight hanging. That looks like bad news. Maybe they could do this and attack the rook here and try to make it messy. Yeah, I think Feingold is sacking a pawn in a bid to complicate. Like, he knows his position is not looking great. So he's like, well, I'm down one pawn. Let's give up another one and try to free up some lines for my pieces. Probably that's a correct practical decision because, I mean, all the other knight moves and moves like king h2 were not looking appealing. So f4 could be correct. I think good move from Spencer Feingold. Taken here. Maybe black's best off just playing like queen e5. Bringing the queen right back, allowing knight takes f5, and they could always trade the bishop for the knight if they wanted. They would still be up a pawn after that. So, yeah, I think Roseman is still definitely in control, but maybe Feingold can mix the game up a bit. So Lenderman has played knight a5. Yeah, so he decides not to protect the pawn on g5, and instead he goes on the counterattack. So the tactical justification for this move is that if white plays queen takes a5, they lose the c4 pawn with check. Very nice find by Lenderman. Does that work out? Okay, we're going to need to look at this one. Don't you guys think this looks like an interesting game? Queen a or knight a5. So if white snaps here, black could maybe play bishop takes first, but let's say queen takes c4, attacking the king. And now white's king has to be very careful. Maybe queen c3, queen here, check. Bishop e1. This looks like white's defending, though. So maybe the idea is queen takes a5, first take on e4. So take the bishop. If white were to take on a7 with check, now there's rook b7. Although maybe even this now. This is a weird position. But let's say instead of this, white plays f takes e4. I think a line like this is critical. And if white blocks, black's going to start gathering some loose pawns, I think. Either take here or maybe check and go pick up this pawn. It's a bold decision by Lenderman. I mean, am I missing something obvious after knight a5? It just seems like a sacrifice to me, and maybe not even one where he's going to immediately win the material back. Hey, Tyrone, how's it going? Good to see you in the chat. Hope everything is well. I disagree, 779. GM is still very difficult to achieve. Players have gotten better, but GM is still pretty tough to achieve. What do you guys think of this position? What do you make of the knight a5 move by Lenderman? I mean, that's a game-changing move right there. I haven't sufficiently analyzed this one, but I'm curious to hear what you guys think. Because, yeah, queen takes a5. I would predict bishop takes e4. Because I don't know that queen takes c4 check, queen to c3 is panning out the way that black wants. So I would assume bishop takes e4 will be played. There's an interesting theoretical debate about the value of the bishop pair going on in the chat. It's not that simple, Chris, because as you see, if white takes the piece, black's going to be getting some play, like this line I was looking at. You know what? There's also the possibility of just queen g4 here, isn't there? Oh, no, but there's queen takes a7. Okay, so white has this in store, forking the king and the rook. So maybe queen g4 isn't an option for black. So I think like this is a primary thread that would have to be considered. And I mean, if king here, I think white doesn't want to allow this, or maybe even queen f1, but probably queen e4. So I would predict, should this position arise, that queen c3 would be played. But black can gather a bunch of pawns. White has some scattered forces now, too. Black's got everything kind of under wraps. And does Nizhnik have any reasonable alternatives? Because if he has to play like bishop takes bishop, maybe that's okay. Try to force black to take with the knight and kind of deactivate that piece. But certainly queen takes a5 is the critical line here. Mint says, I don't see how knight a5 works. Someone's giving a line. Queen takes a5, bishop takes e4, f takes e4, queen takes c4, queen c3, queen f1, bishop e1. Yeah, that's the line I was looking at. So this happening.
Check.
Yeah, so white's going to lose one pawn back at least. Let's say black takes here. So black has 2 pawns for the piece. And also this pawn on e4 is weak. They've got to pass g-pawn. Maybe Lenderman thinks that even if he can't figure everything out, that this represents good practical chances for black. And it forces Nizhnik on the defensive a little bit. So that could be a decision to try to change the tide of the game. I think with rook h5, Nizhnik is looking forward to simply pressuring black and trying to exploit his bishop pair advantage and a seemingly more comfortable position. And knight a5 is, to use a term of Grandmaster Yermolinsky's, like a trend-breaking move. Black senses the game is trending in white's favor with all those long-term advantages. So knight a5, he's like, all right, we're going to try to turn this thing around right away. What's up, Greg? You're saying St. Louis is losing on board 4. Maybe if something happened. Whoa, what happened here? Big development. What in the world just happened? Wow, Nakata found something interesting then. So let's get this right. So rook c3, rook c8. So Nakata played rook a3, queen b5, rook here, queen here, and now queen e4. Wow, nice idea from young Akira Nakata. He's threatening mate, and Rosenthal thought it was necessary to play c6 and give up the knight to avert the mate threat. Yeah, because okay, we got to copy this one. This would be a huge result. If Nakata gets this victory, this blows the match wide open in favor of Manhattan, because Rosman's game is looking good. So yeah, Rosenthal really can't afford to lose this. Oops, let me go to the end. Sorry. Is that all just forced? So after rook c8, rook a3, attacking the queen. Okay, black can play queen b4 or queen b5. He played queen b5, and then this. And now this just looks like a blunder, because after queen e4, how does black defend? I mean, knight d5 is going to run into rook takes b7 here, and then queen d3 or something. Go attack this pawn. That looks close to winning. I would assume. Maybe queen c6, rook a1, something like that. Should be winning for white. So maybe queen e8 is just losing immediately, but does black even have any good alternatives, I guess is the question. What about queen c6?
Check.
Knight takes a6 in that case. Pawn can't take, loses the queen. So we'd have to bring the king to the a file. And even white just going back here is going to give black a lot of issues. Suddenly black has lost a pawn and there's an open a file. Wow, okay. So if we back up even further, rook a3 was queen b5 wrong. Clearly black has to get out of the attack on the queen. Maybe queen b4 is better. So that if rook b3, he can at least take here. There's some funky stuff going on here too, though. Maybe white can play this move. And if pawn takes, there's knight takes with the fork. I don't rightly know what's going on, but pretty clearly from the way the game played out, yeah, white is just winning now. Black lost a piece, and they only have a pawn to show for it. And the attack continues. Stunning set of circumstances here. Impressive. Okay, so Nakata showing that he's no slouch on board 4. He hasn't had a great regular season, and he's vastly outrated. But yeah, he's just dead winning against Nicky Rosenthal. Good night, Mohammad Reza. Yeah, good play by Nakata. I agree. I've been kind of criticizing some of his decisions in this game, but he shows that he knows what he's doing on the attack. Came up with a nice line there. Rook a3, rook b3, queen e4. I was saying he should have played queen e4 earlier, but he had the patience to just sit there and look for an opportunity to strike with that move. Yeah, chess runner, you could argue that Rosenthal should have castled kingside. At the time he castled queenside, though, it looked like the right decision. Miles says, I'm late. What openings were played and what's the expected score? Well, all the games are in progress, and Nakata is looking like he's going to win. This is the closest we have to a decisive game. The other games are pretty tense. As far as openings, you can go to uschessleague.com and look at the games later. Okay, well, predicting a white victory here, I mean, I don't see how white is not going to win this game. Something like rook a1 looks good right now. Let's go to another game. Let's go back to board 1. Nizhnik and Lenderman. Looks like they're playing out this critical line. So knight a5, queen takes a5, bishop takes e4. Nizhnik might be debating whether to play queen takes a7 here. I mentioned that this move was possible. I don't rightly trust it, to be honest, but the idea would be queen takes a7, check, rook b7, queen a6. Defending c4, and that bishop doesn't have a good square. I mean, maybe bishop c6, queen takes c6, queen takes c4, check is good for black. There's a lot of pieces around white's king. Yeah, I don't think white can really do queen takes a7, so I think f takes e4 is going to be played, and black will take on c4 with check. Board 2. Izoria doubling up the rooks. Okay, so after a brief gesture on the king side, he's going to get ready to pile up those rooks there. Zoria still in pretty severe time pressure, 7 minutes remaining. So Rosman took the pawn, and then Feingold did not play rook f1. He actually played knight h5, attacking the queen and also the f pawn. And Rosman just dropped the queen back to d6. So in this game, black is up 2 pawns. Assuming that Nakata is going to win, if Rosman gets the win here, all that Manhattan needs is a half point on the top 2 boards. And probably the Azoria game is looking like the more secure one. I think the Nizhnik-Lenderman game, almost anything could happen still, with black having sacrificed that piece. So all they would need is just a half point from those top 2 boards, and they win the match. Too early to call it for sure, but I mean, I think if Nakata wins as we expect him to, he's going to be the hero of this match. For Rosman to win is expected, but Nakata, I mean, That's like the X factor for Manhattan. If he wins the game, if you told me before the match that Nakata was going to win, I would bet on Manhattan every time. Jacobian has played d4. Yeah, Jacobian might be in a position here where he just needs to press for the win as black. Even though Izori is very good and it looks like white is solid right now, based on how these games are shaping up, I think St. Louis has to get the max they can from these top two boards. Just all out push for victory. So rook c4. What if knight a5, attacking the rook? Probably rook back to c1. Keep the bishop defended. Oh, that's a funny line, Tony. Let's check out that line that Tony just said. So Nizhnik is currently thinking in this position. So I was speculating whether queen takes a7 check is possible here.
Check.
And Tony says that this is a funny option here. And then instead of moving the bishop, playing rook b6 and attacking the queen. And if take, black can take here check. White can't go here because the bishop survives. So here, and now what? Is black going to mate white somehow? Like check here, bishop here? Does this actually work? I don't know. Check. It's hard to believe black is going to survive this. Nah, that can't be right. Maybe check here, king e1. Take here. Oh, yeah, this is probably it. Because if king f1, there's bishop d3, checkmate. So he'd have to go back this way. Yeah, and white's king is totally open. I mean, black has a perpetual if they want it.
Check.
Which under the circumstances might be all that Manhattan needs. So, yeah, I would predict that Nizhnik is going to take on e4 and try to go up the piece and make something happen. But Lenderman's going to get a lot of pawns that he's going to be playing against an open white king. He's going to get at least 2 pawns and possibly 3 if he plays his cards right. All right, so let's keep an eye on some of these games again. This is board 4, Nakata. Rook c4 was just played, probably idea rook a4 and crashing through on a6. I don't think Rosenthal's going to last long in this one. Yeah, he's already has to resort to some desperate stuff like b5, further weakening the position. Okay, now rook a3 could be considered. That would be just a way to attack a6. If rook a3 is played, black has to sacrifice their queen. Because if they move the queen, rook takes a6 is coming. So rook a3, queen takes a3, b takes a3, b takes c4, queen takes c4. White's winning a6. Not to mention white has a queen and knight versus 2 rooks. Game over completely. I don't think this game is going to last more than a few more minutes at most. Yeah, rook a3, keep it simple and bank that point, young Nakata. You earned it. This is what sometimes happens to, I almost said materialistic player. Not that Rosenthal's a materialistic player, but if you grab a pawn and you try to weather the storm, like sometimes you just get mated like this or lose material. I mean, in a way, this must feel like kind of unfair to Rosenthal because it looks like he's just consolidating, playing solid chess, and all of a sudden a combo works for white, and there's nothing to be done. It's not even like black was able to give up the piece in a way that gives him some play. It's just he straight up lost a knight. And not only that, the attack still continues. So, tough loss for St. Louis. Tactical Eyes predicting 2.5 for Manhattan. That's not true, Mint H. There's plenty of people who live in Minnesota. Lily's predicting 3-1 Manhattan. Yeah, it's looking really good for Manhattan. 2.5 or 3 is a safe prediction. If Feingold can pull off a miracle, then St. Louis gets right back into it. But just the way the Rosman versus Feingold match or game is trending, it doesn't look like Feingold's gonna find much here. He's down 2 pawns, and Rosman has shown good control this entire time. So bishop d7, finally he develops this bishop. If this rook leaves the back rank, white gets mated, rook e1. So he can't play like rook b7, for instance. White is trying to coordinate the queen and the knight, like queen g3 is always something white would like to do, but black's queen on d6 just deals with it. So even though white has generated some play, I still don't see how white's going to make anything of this. Like, it's hard to create like an actual threat against black's king. Black could even play like a slow move like king h8 if they wanted. Maybe king h8 and rook g8. Or a timely rook to e3 is also possible. So Feingold brings the knight back. This might allow queen to g3. At least then, if white's able to play queen g3 check, and black's queen were still on d6 undefended, black could not play king h8 because of knight g6 check. It would be a discovery on the queen. Squash Addict is giving a line. Is that a drawing line, Squash Addict? It's a stockfish line, so it's coming from the engine. We'll check that in a second. You still got that game up. Okay, we can check that out. Nakata did not play rook a3. Why not play rook a3, though? Akira, Nakata. Just do that. I mean, rook back to c1, you're still winning, but rook a3 was very clear. This also is pretty clear, too. I mean, he's just going to go rook a1. And then to save a6, black would have to play a5, and white would even have a second chance to sack on a5 and then play rook a3. But also something like just rook a1, a5, and then rook b to a3, a4, and like b3, or even probably even knight takes a4 works there, although white would have to calculate a tiny bit. Yeah, I'm sure knight takes a4 would also work. The main thing here, if you're white, is just winning in a way that's comfortable and logical to you. I mean, I'm not suggesting this is like a terrible mistake that white didn't play rook a3, but to me, in looking at this position, I know I can win after rook a3 virtually on autopilot, and I don't see any way black can complicate it. At least on rook c1, like black gets to keep their queen for now. d4 is under attack. Black saves this game 1 in 100 times, but maybe there's some hope. All right, so let's check that line that was just mentioned here. And what's going on board 1? Okay, so we've had some change here. I think the line that Squash Addict was saying was right here after bishop e1, rook takes b2. Wow. Rook takes b2. And I assume the idea is to play, after king takes b2, queen e2 check. And then win the rook. Yeah, I'm sure several people gave that, because if you're following with the engine, probably the engine just immediately said that was the best possibility. Let's check out that line. All right, so here's the position after c4. So was this move possible for Lenderman? Rook takes b2. Pretty cool move to play. Yeah, now whichever way white takes it, there's a consequence. If take here, then
Check.
black picks up the bishop with check, and then goes
Check.
here check, forking the king and the rook. That's good for black. I mean, after king c3, rook takes h5, white would be struggling to draw, because black's up, what, 2 pawns here? So probably after rook takes b2, king takes b2 would be the answer, but then rook check. Let's say white, I don't know, blocks with the bishop or something, and then take here, and black has 3 pawns for the piece. White's king is still a little exposed, and there's still pawn weaknesses. Or no, I'm sorry, it's 2 pawns for the piece still. But maybe there's chances. I don't know, actually. I mean, if there's only 2 pawns for the piece, I'd still rather be white here for sure. Was it really that good, Squash Addict? Rook takes b2. At any rate, c4 was played instead. So this moves c4. Idea of rook b3, I assume. trying to sink the rook in and attack the queen. Get this piece working for black. White's rook is looking off sides. I mean, it's not contributing to the defense right now. I think this this piece sacrifice kind of rattled Nizhnik a little bit. I mean, he's a great player. He's not going to get rattled by very much, but I kind of like Lenderman's decision to change the course of the game a bit. It forces Nizhnik on the defensive. And with time ticking down for both sides, maybe that favors black, the side who's pressing here. Greg and Little Peasant, Alejandro Ramirez debating the chances for a Manhattan victory. Someone said Manhattan was 90% to win this match. Isoria low on time, Nizhnik much better. Okay, so it seems to be that white is still better here according to the engines, which I totally believe. It just seems like it'll be hard for white to deal with some of the threats black can create here. I think Nizhnik's going to have to make some accurate defensive moves. He does have a little more time than Lenderman, so it's certainly within his powers to steer this game to safety. Let's go to board 2. We haven't looked at that one recently. Isoria and Akobian. All right, so Isoria is making some strides. Queen into b4, offering a queen trade. I don't think a queen trade would be good for black. If the queens get off the board, then Isoria, with his less than 5 minutes, is going to find the position much easier to play. And that d4 pawn could just be lost in the long run. Like queen takes, maybe he even takes with the pawn. But let's just say bishop takes. Knight c6, bishop c5. White can try to double up the rooks on the c-file then. Yeah, it's going to be hard to defend d4. So could Akobian play something like queen f3, invading and attacking d3 and g4? Queen f3, queen takes d4. Rook d8 maybe. Queen e4, offer a trade of queens. I think there's a lot of scenarios here where the queens will come off the board. I somehow still think this game will be drawn. I don't know why, but it just seems like it's heading that way. Maybe it's because the pawn structure is kind of symmetrical. There's only one open file. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but... All right, so, whoa, what is going on here? Rosman has taken some liberties with his king safety. So after knight f4 was played, Rosman came in with a rook, rook e3, and then check here, king g7, and knight h5. Is this anything for black to be concerned about? So what's the plan? If king to g6, attacking the knight, queen g8 check, king takes h5, queen takes h7. That's a pretty open king. Queen g7 check, king f4. Could he really do that? He's going to play king h6, okay. Well, yeah, if you're going to attack the knight, king h6 makes more sense, because now queen g8 doesn't come with check. So Feingold is only attacking with his queen and knight right now. That's a powerful attacking unit, but without the inclusion of the white rook, can white really hope to kill black here? Moreover, I mean, he doesn't really have a way back now, does he? Because this knight is deprived of any safe retreat squares. G3, F4, F6, G7, all those squares are covered. So white might just have to pitch that knight. I mean, G4 is out of the question. Bishop C6 wins on the spot. So he's got to do something like queen G8 and go for like king takes H5, queen takes H7 check, something along those lines. Yep, there he goes. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts about what's going to happen here. Rune says, still queen G8 or H6 has some threats. Doesn't seem so easy practically. Someone might be saying that black is just totally winning. This is a position a computer would get to the heart of right away, but since I've said I'm not going to use a computer, we're going to keep some mystery here. John, how do you feel about your internet fame, and has it changed you as a person or your outlook on life at all? No, I'm pretty much the same person. I'm still Johnny from the block. No, I don't really read into it very much. Okay, let's go to board 4. Where's board 4? I just want to see if Nakata has won yet. So rook a3, Rosenthal played queen takes d4. Yeah, I mean, nothing really has changed here. Black's still totally busted. Rook takes a6, knight takes a6. All these moves are good. So I'm actually going to ignore that board for now because we're pretty much chalking it up for white. Let's go to board 1 again. This is board 1. Okay, so after c4, Nizhnik played g3, so getting a pawn off an attack square, maybe allowing for rook h2. Rook into b3, queen a5. Boy, this is complicated. I mean, all those people saying this is much better for white, I mean, you might have a point, but I mean, would you feel comfortable playing white here? This is like a totally messy position. I mean, if I look at this, I have no idea what's going on. Like, I have to just calculate and calculate pretty hard. It's just so random. So if something like c3 is played, because rook takes e3 runs into queen takes a7 check, forking the king and the rook. So let's say c3, trying to cut off the coordination between the queen and the bishop. I think Nizhnik's idea is queen c7 check. And black's king is open to the elements. Like if king f6, then queen takes d6 check is going to win for white. And if the king goes to the back rank, either like queen d8 or rook h8, some combo of that is looking good. So queen a5 is a counterattacking move by Nizhnik. And he's saying, hey, buddy, your king is open as well. Maybe black should play like king f6 here and try to run. But king f6 runs into queen d8 check. That white queen can hound the black king almost no matter where it goes. What about king e6? How about that move? So king e6, get the king off a dark square. That runs into queen d5, maybe? King back to e7, that's not so clear. Because if this white queen leaves the defense of the bishop, then always queen takes e1 is a threat. And black would hate to have to play rook to b7 right now and go backwards, but they might deem it necessary. But if white gets another move, like if rook b7 is played, probably rook h8. And all of a sudden, queen d8 check would be a threat, and the noose is tightening around Alex Lenderman's position. He's under 5 minutes now, too. David, I think Nizhnik has been out of vowels for quite a while. All right, so queen a5. The only viable move I see here for black is king e6. There might be some other stuff, but just on a cursory analysis, king e6 seems like the way to go. Because everywhere else, the black king can be checked on either a7 or c7 or d5. Or, sorry, on king e6, he can still get checked on d5, but king e7 at least doesn't lose for black. What do you guys think? Yeah, but chess runner, if rook b7, I think rook h8 is good, right? So Nizhnik could come up huge with a win here. I mean, at this point, St. Louis needs this badly. They need this point. All right, keep an eye on that one. Let's quickly go to board 2. It's not board 2. This is board 2. Akobian Azoria. So Akobian did avoid the trade of queens. I think he kind of sensed that the static nature of the position after the queen trade wasn't going to offer him much. So he's doing this, and Azoria just grabbed a pawn. That's an important pawn to grab, though. And queen e4 could always be played, offering a further trade of queens. I mean, the g4 pawn is not a huge prize for black. Maybe he'll wind up taking it, but after queen takes g4, I can always play rook g1, and maybe also just queen e4 in response to queen takes g4. Let's see board 3. As this one was getting sharp after queen g8. Queen g8, king... Ooh, no king takes h5. Rosman played bishop to g6. Or sorry, bishop e8. Maybe intending bishop g6 in a lot of cases. And then queen g7 check, forcing him to take. Here, here. Rook f1. Threatening rook takes f5 mate. Whoa. This is why you got to analyze without an engine. If you look at this with an engine, it just totally kills your understanding and enjoyment of this. All right, so rook f1, rook takes f5 mate is the threat. Bishop g6 would be bad. If bishop g6, white plays h4 check, and then king g4, take the bishop. And I think white's going to win that. At the very least, white has a draw, but black does not want to play bishop g6, I'm pretty sure. So what to do then? Because they want their bishop here. Like bishop d7, again, white could at the very least take a draw, like queen g7, queen h7, but maybe even try for more. Black's king is out on g5 after all. So I think black would prefer to defend f5 with the queen or the rook. Let's say queen e5, like a centralizing move. He's going to play f4. Okay, that move also makes a lot of sense because the king can now gain access to f5. So how does white play this? h4 check, king g4 into the lion's den. But where's the follow-up? Because the bad part for white is like they're running out of stuff to throw at black. Their queen and their rook are not exactly working together here. So the queen is trying to create all these threats against the black king on her own. But it looks like black is slipping away. And if black slips away, they're going to win. I mean, they have so much material. Throw up a piece and a pawn. Greg says this looks scary. Yeah, kind of, but I mean, what else does white do here? How can they throw this at black? Black's next move will be bishop g6 if they can. So I think white's obliged to play f4, or h4 rather. Where's the threat? Tactical Eye says, Greg, f4 was the best move. Yeah, I think Roseman's got this under control. I think he's going to win it for the applesauce. Unless Feingold comes up with something real impressive here with 4 minutes remaining on his clock. Let's go back to board 1. This is board 2, Akobe and Azoria. This is the Nakata game. All right, here we got the Lenderman game. So what did Alex decide to do? After queen a5, he pulled the rook back. So he said, all right, I believe your threats against my king. Let's go rook b7. And then rook here, rook d7. Yeah, so Nizhnik played the move that I suspected he would, threatening queen d8. So rook d7 was played to defend. I mean, this is a moral victory for Nizhnik. He's at least stopped that black rook from coming in and terrorizing the white king. I mean, he's still somewhat tied down to the bishop. So this isn't a slam dunk or anything for white. White's king is permanently exposed. Queen back to d2. Okay, defensive move. Instantly queen f3, attacking the pawn on e4. All right. So another thing to realize here, if white can cleanly trade queens, white's very happy. Because the queen trade would ensure that black isn't going to create threats against white's king. Probably white's just going to convert that pretty easily. So, I mean, moves like queen f2 come to mind, but after queen takes e4, does white have anything going against black's king? Doesn't look like it. Actually, this bishop is kind of a bad piece. I think white's best chance to activate that is to get it out to b4. Maybe threaten d6 or something. So Nizhnik still needs to consolidate. All right, Akobian. After queen takes d4, Akobian played knight c6, queen e3, queen takes g4. So Izoria lost the extra pawn back, but again, I'm not sure he really cares about the g-pawn. I would play queen e4 here, I think. Queen e4 looks like a good move. It eyes that knight on c6. Also, it ensures that if queen f5 is ever played, you could trade queens and then maybe play like d4. Under 3 minutes for Izoria. Rosenthal still on the run. This is very nearly over. Rook takes e7, king takes e7, queen d7. Black has king f6 to avoid losing. Knight e4 check, king g6. Yeah, it's still completely winning. No change there. Let's go to board 3 if we can find it. So Rosman, sorry for all the different windows, guys. Feingold h4 was played, so he played first queen g8, drew the bishop to g6, then h4. So Rosman is debating between, I assume, king f5 and king h5, because king g4 just loses the bishop. So, I mean, king f5 is the move that looks correct, running towards safety in the center of the board. King h5, though, maybe... king h6. King h6 is also possible. I didn't even see that one. So if queen h8 check, bishop h7, black's queen controls h8, so maybe the king is nicely tucked away here in this pocket. Roseman's playing very quickly, too. Like, he didn't slow down at all after White boldly sacrificed this knight. Roseman just kept the tempo up, and that's probably contributed to his great position he has here. It looks like he's just going to win because White never came up with something for the sacrificed knight. The real big problem for White is like the rook is not participating in the attack at all. It's just the queen on its own with some help from the h-pawn, but it's too little too late. h5 was played. Okay, so yeah, trying to get something going. I think he could even play king takes h5. King takes h5, queen h8 check, king g5. White is out of checks then. I mean, king takes h5, g4 isn't going to work. Again, like even king g5 there is totally safe. Yeah, this is a last-ditch attempt, I think. So much action going on. Rosenthal is down a rook now. Ooh, Nakata found a nice move. So he took on e7, traded the rooks, then queen d7 check, king here, and then knight d3. Beautiful backward move, attacking the queen and defending his rook. So queen takes c8. This is possible next move. Yeah, this is just black down a rook. Roseman played bishop takes h5. So queen h8 check, king g6, queen g8. He's going to slip away through f5, it seems. Yeah, then something like queen h7 check, bishop g6. And once more, the checks are nearly running out for White. g4 check, king g5. Feingold's clock ticking down. Let's go to board 1, if we can find it. All right, here we go. Nizhnik Lenderman. So after queen f3, queen d5 was played, queen f1, queen d1. It's a little back and forth here. Lenderman very low on time. Nizhnik's going to have to win this. I mean, Nizhnik and Akobian are going to have to win. There's no two ways about it. Manhattan's going to go up 2 points on the bottom 2 boards. Sorry I'm skipping around a lot. Just this format for trying to get all the games in screen is kind of clumsy. I'm going to put that Akobian Lenderman game, or maybe put this one up until we see a decisive result real quick. Why is that YPB? Why does Nakata make you feel depressed? Is he a good young player? Well, if you want to feel even more depressed, there's 12-year-old grandmasters. So, like Bu Xiangzi and Sergei Karyakin. So, being 2000 at 12 is decent, but you can go way further than that. Yeah, and chess is great because no matter what your level, you can always appreciate it, right? Okay, Rosman's thinking a little bit there. Let's keep an eye on this one. Lenderman. So he played queen g1. and then queen e2. Looks like black's queen is getting boxed in. Look at that. All the available squares for the queen have been taken away. G3 is protected, and none of the other squares in the vicinity of the queen are any good. Ooh, I think Lenderman has completely lost the thread of this game. Yeah, with queen f2 next move, Nizhnik could just force a queen trade. Okay, he'll address the pawn on c3 now. Maybe he could even play b4 here. That's probably not a bad idea. Just bypass that pawn. He'll just take it. Okay, so he's probably going to play, like, let's say on rook c7, just king c2, and then queen f2 at some point, and just trade the queens. He could try to lay a trap for this queen, like maybe ensnare it somehow, but I think the queen trade is going to be so easy for white to win, he'll probably just do that. Yeah, black doesn't have any pawns for the piece now. White has 5 pawns, black has 5 pawns. So just king c2, queen f2 coming. What's to be done? All right, so at least St. Louis is going to get a point here. Izoria Kobian, this game is really heating up. Rook c4, attacking the queen over here. All right, Rosenthal finally resigned, so chalk went up for Manhattan in that game. We've been expecting that result for quite a while. Nizhnik just played king c2. Lenderman is grasping at straws. There's not much to do. G4. Yeah, but queen f2. I think Nizhnik's going to keep it simple. Like I said, he could try to calculate something better, but I mean, even though white's pawns are terrible, that doesn't compensate for an entire bishop. After queen f2, queen takes f2, bishop takes f2. All right, no, he's going to take his time. I guess he's going to maybe gather the g4 pawn. Because even if he takes g4 with the rook, queen h1, trying to activate the queen, still met by rook h4. Still no way out for the queen. Let's quickly go over to board 3 for a second. So Roseman's king has made it to the center. It's weird that the center would be like the safest place, but that's away from where the kingside action is taking place. Yeah, Feingold's out of options here. I mean, he's got a few more maybe checks. Actually, with the king on e5, there's not even a good check he can give. Like e8 is covered by the bishop. This one is over. Manhattan is, yeah. Manhattan's going to win this game and take a huge lead. Although it looks like Nizhnik is going to at least make it 2-1. Queen h8. I mean, Feingold's going to play on. All right, let's take a look at this one. What is happening here? So suddenly, Izoria has sacrificed some stuff on the king side, and he's just going for the black king. Wow. So queen h6, attacking g7, threatening mate. Now that leaves d3 hanging with check, but queen takes d3, king goes to the corner. Black doesn't have time to take, they'd get checkmated. So the only way out for Jacobian here is to play g6. Note that f8 is covered by the bishop, so if ever g6 is played, that rook is swinging over to h4 and setting up queen takes h7. Okay, so king a1 will be played. What is black's defense? I don't see a defense. Again, g6, rook h4. That's all you need for queen takes h7. Unreal. Wow, this game came to a swift conclusion. Izoria just went for it on the king side. And look at Jacobian's pieces. The 2 rooks, the knight, the queen side that isn't going anywhere. Crazy turnaround in this one. So Manhattan, I mean, if this holds up, they win the match 3-1. Okay, this game's still going. Nizhnik, whoa. Nizhnik is up a rook now. Lenderman played the very desperate rook c4, just striving for something. He gives up the bishop, but yeah, Nizhnik's not going to have any difficulty from here. Checks the king. Yeah, this is done for. I think black's in a mating net. King e6, rook h6 check, pawn f6, queen c4, something like that, or queen c8. Way too much. Just going to stay here for a moment. Lenderman's got 20 seconds. Queen takes d6. Yeah, this is just a mate. King g7, rook takes g4. King h7, rook h4 check. Yep, Lenderman resigns. Okay, so as expected, Nizhnik wins on that board. Jacobian's still thinking here. Probably wondering what went wrong there. Feingold trying desperately to try to drum something up, but ooh, this could be the end of the road for him. After queen c8 check, black has blocked with the queen, offering a trade. Oh, g4, that's creative. He's keeping the fires burning, if ever so faintly. Yep, bishop takes g4, queen takes c5 check. King's going to come back to g6 probably. White has sacrificed everything in a desperate bid to open black's king, but yeah, this is a foregone conclusion. Black's going to win this one. Jacobian's still thinking. Queen d1. Oh, I missed that this move was possible. But I suppose rook c1? Yeah, rook c1. So point of queen d1, I should have seen this move, but yeah, if rook takes d1, there's g takes h6. But yeah, Izoria played the better move, queen c1, and now, yeah, the queen was under attack, and so was the mate still threatened, so he had to give up his queen. Yeah, now white's up. Actually, only a little bit of material, technically, because black has so many pawns. Black has 3 extra pawns. So black has 3 pawns plus a rook for the queen. But their king side is still open. All right, so this game isn't completely over. This is probably going to be the last game we're going to see. Yep, Feingold resign. All right, so we have a decisive game right here. All that Izoria needs is a draw. So even a half point would just take care of business right now. Let's bear that in mind. He doesn't have to win. 3 minutes left. I mean, anything could happen still. Stick around. And again, if we see a 2-2 tie, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but if we see a 2-2 tie, we're going to a playoff blitz match. All right? Queen g5, threatening mate. Probably knight g6 has to be played to defend. And then maybe Izoria will just gather the pawn on f5. Queen takes f5. Makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, Jacobian found probably the only defense. Elvin Bredin said in the chat, Queen d8 was horrible. Yeah, I agree. I mean, if Queen d8 just allows Queen h6, then you got to play something other than Queen d8, like Queen h5 or Queen takes h2. I mean, maybe White has an attack in those cases as well, but Queen d8, Queen h6 was pretty clear. And then Black found Queen d1, fortunately, but yeah, looks like this they're probably losing with best play. Do teammates know the result of each other's games? Like, does he know he only needs a draw? Yeah, definitely, Michael. Izoria undoubtedly is keeping a close eye on the other games. They're all playing in the same location. You can even watch the other boards. Like, you can pull it up on your screen and watch the other boards. So yes, he knows exactly what's needed here. I'm going to move this down just a little bit. Get this better in frame. Okay, bishop d4, attacking the knight. So Izoria is trying to pry open this long diagonal, because he knows that after black has played g6, that black's dark squares are severely compromised. Oh, knight f3. Okay, so if queen f6, threatening mate, he's going to trade on d4. That's the only way to stop bad things from happening to you. Queen takes d4. Well, I mean, one thing that does hamper white here a bit is the fact that their king is perpetually in a back rank mate threat, right? Like, if ever black can get something to the back rank, white's just going to be checkmated. That's a gross simplification of what's going on, but that's going to, like, if let's say the pawn were on b5, this would be a lot easier for white. But now they actually have to keep an eye on their king a little bit. And we're about to be into our third hour on this stream. Yeah, eventful games all around, all decisive games. And if you just recently joined, so 3 of the 4 games have been played, and Manhattan is leading 2-1. So they've had 2 wins, and St. Louis had 1 win. And since all that is needed is 2.5, Manhattan only needs a draw out of Azoria with the extra queen here. I assume rook d8 would be played to attack the queen. White gets a chance, probably h4, h5. Try to put this h-pawn to work and maybe create some threats around black's king. May not be much, but possibly the annoying thing for Jacobian here is, like, let's say rook d8 is played, or rook e8, whatever. He's going to have a hard time activating this rook because it's needed to defend a4. Probably he played rook e8 so that if h4, he can at least play rook e4 and attack the queen and also the h-pawn. So maybe he's trying to use that e4 square as a hook to double up his rooks. Yeah, I think this almost certainly should be a win for white, but Jacobian's got a puncher's chance. Moreover, he knows what's on the line, so he's not looking for a draw. He's got to win. Thanks to those who've stuck around. It's now past 10 o'clock p.m. Central, 11 o'clock Eastern, and a very early hour in Europe. King b1, so Azoria just brings his king a little bit closer. It's probably a good long-term move. Rook e4, he's going to double up those rooks ASAP. So now the rook performs a useful function. It's defending the pawn on a4. Queen to f6. Okay. So queen f6. So what if black just doubles up? Rook e8. It threatens rook e1. I mean, queen takes f5 can't be played because there's rook e1 check. So what is white going to do here? Rook c1? Maybe? I don't know if the rook's good anymore on the g file, so maybe rook c1 and bring it over for protection. Yep, that's what he does. So now if something like rook e1, probably like queen c6, having the queen also back up the rook on c1 and maybe attack that pawn on a4. This does look reasonably hard to win for white because black's position is pretty safe, and this rook is glued to the back rank for now because of that rook e1 check threat. Or at least if, like, the rook does invade, rook e1 check would drag the rook right back. I still fail to see how black is going to even attempt to win this, though. That's the problem for them. Like, sitting there is one thing, sitting there and staying solid, but winning this position is something completely different. Because to win, I mean, realistically, they're probably going to have to activate these pawns, and in doing so, they're going to open their king. I don't think they're going to win with the 2 rooks versus the queen and the rook alone. So Azoria might just sit there and tell Jacobian, take your best shot. Robert, yes, I think black probably can hold a draw. I mean, now I was saying a second ago, I think white can probably win it. White might be able to win with best play, and they may have to take some risks to do so. For black to, like, hold a draw seems plausible, but yeah, that's the problem for St. Louis, is that a draw doesn't cut it. They need a victory. Because I think for white to win, like, somehow they got to get rid of the back rank threat, and that's going to take some finagling and careful play. It's much easier just to sit there as white and play something like queen c6 now, or yeah, I mean queen almost anywhere. Queen c6 doesn't even threaten anything, but it doesn't hurt anything either. h4, okay. So stopping the advance of this pawn. By virtue of black having played h5, like at some point, I don't know how this would actually happen, but white could maybe play rook g1 and set up a sacrifice on g6 and go for a perpetual check. But the rook, as I said, is going to have to stick here. Like rook g1's out of the question because of rook e1. Jacobian under a minute. Rook back to e6. Queen to d4. Casual retreat by Zoria makes sense. And we've got our first repetition, queen f6. No hesitation by Zoria, so yeah, he's completely happy with the draw right now. I mean, from Jacobian's point of view, like these games are not rated, so he has nothing to lose by going for a win. And for him to just sit there and take a draw would be pretty cowardly from a team perspective. So yeah, I fully expect him to try to win, like f4. In an actual game, he'd probably just settle for the draw and consider himself lucky to have held out. But he's got to go for it. So f4, okay. Someone in the ICC chat says, this is robustly unwinnable by either side. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I don't really see how either side's going to win this. So black is pinning some hopes on the f-pawn. Rook d1, Izoria says, all right, I can just wait here. Good move, because the f-pawn can't go any further without being lost. If rook e6, we're taking that pawn. If rook e1, I assume rook right back to c1. Still threatening queen takes f4. So white has shuffling moves he can make, like rook here and here. Black doesn't really have as many shuffling moves. Black's king can't move. If this rook moves, then yeah, like f4 becomes weak, or the back rank threat is diminished. Yes, Michael, I'm caffeinated tonight. Like I said earlier, I've got some iced coffee. I'm doing all right on it. I've been drinking it very slowly over the past 3 hours. Rook e1, white should just bring that rook right back to c1. They could also maybe play king c1, but I don't think Izoria will mess around with that. Yeah, he just brings it right back to c1. Because if rook takes, king takes, rook e1 check, the king escapes to d2. Meanwhile, black is just, on the verge of losing the f4 pawn. White's going to play rook takes f, or queen takes f4 next move. So I think he's got to play the rook back to e4. So rook 1 to e4, and white will, of course, repeat with rook d1, and we could see a draw here. I wouldn't blame Jacobian for taking a draw now. There's no realistic way to play for a win without completely losing. I mean, he's not going to like go crazy to try to win this game. He's not going to gift Azoria a free point to do it, as much as you want to help your team to pull even in the match. Yeah, I predict he's going to just agree a repetition here. 'Cause there's almost no move that black can play. A move with this rook, maybe he could play rook f8. Rook f8's about the only productive move I can see here, but even that, like rook f1 is a good reply. Point of rook f8 would be to try to get white to play rook d8 so you can play rook e1 and checkmate them, but that's not going to happen. What's on the line for this tournament? Is there a prize or just bragging rights? Pretty much just bragging rights. I don't think the winning team gets anything in particular, but it's the culmination of a good season if you win the USCL championship. That's one thing I think people would love to see in the USCL is if there was some some actual prizes and some real incentives to play and do well in this league. F3. Okay, well, full credit to Akobian. He's going to go for it. I really didn't think he would do this, but hey, I mean, it's an unrated game, like I was saying. So his idea, I think, is if queen takes F3, rook takes H4. Pretty gutsy. Passes up the draw and just trying to win with 35 seconds left. So queen takes F3, rook takes H4. Then black has a clean 3 pawns. The rooks are disconnected temporarily. That's something. It'll make it interesting. John, as a 24-40 player, your expected score against Carlsen is roughly 0%. How many points would you expect to score against Magnus out of 100 classical games? Man, I have no idea. That's a tough question for me to answer. I've had that question before. Actually, one of my non-chess playing friends asks me that a lot. Shout out to David if you're watching this stream. Yeah, my buddy David asked me that question. I think I said something like 5 to 10 points, somewhere in that range. Because I think I could nick him for some draws and maybe get... I mean, 100 games, a lot of games. Like, I would get the occasional victory. I'm going to say I'm going to score 8.5 points out of 100. Does that sound reasonable? I don't know. I don't know how that works out math-wise, but I'm not going to get killed. I'm not going to lose 100 to 0. Okay, rook takes h4. Azoria plays rook f1, threatening queen takes f7. Rook e7. Played immediately. Okay, so Akobian's going to try to bring the rook back to e4. Have those rooks like defending everything. Like he's got f7 and also a4 under control. Well, I mean, stick around, guys. This is still going on. I didn't see that f3 resource that Akobian had. I mean, I don't think it really changes the result, the expected result here, but we'll see. Queen a8 check does nothing for white, so I don't think he's really going to look at that. Alejandro, what do you think about this? I see you in the chat. Grandmaster Little Peasant. Jonas says, surely you could draw at least 20 games. That sounds way too high. Drawing 20 games. I think I would win a couple games. David says 8.5 out of 100, 2,500 performance rating. Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I thought. Queen f6, rook e4. King c1. Yeah, Zori is smart. He knows that like he's not going to be able to do much with his king, like constantly having to worry about back rank threats. So he's going to kind of hint that he's going to get this king out in the future. Because in doing so, he might break up the coordination of the two black rooks. John, are you going to do more climbing the rating ladder series, maybe on Lee Chess? Those are great. Yep. Yeah, I will, John Null. When I have some time, I'll do that for sure. Can you remember any game-changing mouse slips in USCL history? Not specific instances, no. I mean, I vaguely remember some scenarios where that has happened. I haven't been involved in a mouse slip scenario. Like, I haven't mouse slipped, and nor has one of my opponents. But I know it's come up. As far as, like, game-changing mouse slips, nothing comes to mind in particular. There's a rule in place for that. If there's, like, an obvious mouse slip, there's a USCL rule that says you can request a take back. Like, the manager for one of the teams can call the league, get in touch with them immediately. It's one of the benefits of playing online. And say, hey, my player just mouse slipped. It's pretty obvious he mouse slipped. Can we get a take back? And they'll look at that request, and if it's reasonable, they'll accommodate it. h4, here comes the h-pawn. Maybe just rook h1? Does white want to attack the h-pawn? What does black do on rook h1? Because white's not getting anywhere with the rook on the f file. I mean, f7 is guarded, so rook h1, in my mind, makes perfect sense. Rook d1 instead. Okay, so he's threatening rook d8 check. This is what can kind of happen with that 30-second increment. Like Jacobian has been around a minute for the past many moves. John, are you going to continue punishing Play Magnus? I've been loving your dry, unrelenting disdain for him. Yeah, I have plans to. Yes, Pato Mark. John planning on doing more chess puzzle videos? Yep. Yeah, I'll probably do one coming out in the next week or two while I'm away in London. John, what about time you mouse slipped on move 10 and then asked for a take back on move 40? I think you're pulling my leg. I don't think that actually happened. I would remember that if it happened. Would you do some games on the Spanish opening theory and the Sicilian, John? Kobian has a matter of seconds left here, by the way. What's he going to do? Got to move. Ooh, he almost flagged there. He had 1 second left, or 1.5 or something when he made that move. Wow. Finally pushed h3. That's playing with fire right there. One little bit of lag and you lose the game on time. All right, so how could this transpire? So rook d8 check would force rook e8. And then rook takes e8, rook takes e8, queen h4. Looks pretty straightforward. That's going to round up this pawn, I think. If rook e3, king d2, yeah, I mean, white's never going to lose that. Okay, now we're getting into the realm where white could definitely win this position after queen h4 on the next move. Yeah, just you eliminate the most dangerous pawn. a4 is now weak. Because a pair of rooks have been traded, the danger to white's king is greatly diminished. And yeah, I mean, I think this position is just losing for black. Unless he can somehow defend a4. Black needs a fortress or something to hold. So it's now a foregone conclusion that black will win this. That trade of rooks really killed him in that department. Now can black hold, and will Zoria offer a mercy draw to win the match? I think that's the only remaining intrigue in this game. Maybe there's some fortress possibilities. Like, what if black were to establish a rook on e4 with a pawn on f5? That would be a fortress, looks to me. So say he plays like pawn f5 right now. Maybe queen takes a4 could be played then, but let's just say pawn f5, queen takes h3, rook e4. White's not getting through that. Kobian's got, again, less than 10 seconds. Rook c8 check. Probably king to... Oh, king d1. I was thinking maybe even queen b1. But this is also good. So is he going to come in with the rook to c2? Rook c2, queen takes h3, rook takes b2. But then queen c8 check. And if king g7, there's queen c3 check and pick up the rook. So black would have to play king h7. Then white has a perpetual queen h3 if they want to take that. That's one simple way for the game to end. Kobian, woo, wow. There he definitely had less than a second left. Yeah, rook takes b2, queen c8 check. King can never go to g7 because of queen c3. I think that would be a fitting way for the game to end. I mean, it benefits Azoria almost nothing to win this game, so securing the draw and thus the match would be completely fine. Yeah, Squash Addict, I might stream a title Tuesday sometime. I haven't done that yet, but yes, I might do that on chess.com. I think Isoria is going to go for the draw. Yeah, I mean, he could try to push his luck and go win that a4 pawn. Actually, it wouldn't really even be pushing luck here, but this is a gentleman's way to end it. And
Draw.
as far as the team is concerned, it ends the game. He's offered a draw. Akobian is going to take it because he has no way to avoid it without losing. Game drawn. There you go. All right. Wow. So Manhattan is the 2015 USCL champion, the Manhattan Applesauce. Excellently played match by them, I think. Their bottom boards just won this match for them. Plain and simple. Nakata came up huge on board 4 with the win over Nicky Rosenthal. He was the clear underdog in that game. And Roseman took care of work against Spencer Feingold. Played a very controlled game, it looks to me. Feingold tried to attack, but Roseman just coolly defended. And even though Nizhnik got a point on board 1 for St. Louis, it wasn't enough. This game ended up being crucial too, but I don't know that Akobian ever had too many chances in this one. I get the sense that Isoria, despite being very low on time, was always doing okay. And actually, I mean, I think Akobian's lucky to have held this because I'm pretty sure he just missed the consequences of Queen D8, Queen H6. Something went wrong in his calculations right around here. Wow. Okay. So fun games to comment on. And I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm probably going to shut off the stream pretty soon. It's already been almost 3.5 hours long stream. Let me know if you guys have any last minute questions here. Fins versus fans. Yeah, probably not tonight. I got to save my voice. But maybe a future live stream. Thank you guys for watching. It was real fun. And I still have coffee left. Nice to see my former team, the Manhattan Applesauce, win. I lived in New York for a year, and I played for the Manhattan Applesauce for a single season. They've always had a pretty decent team. I think, like always, those teams from New York, that area, they're not lacking in good players, like GMs and also up and coming young players. And to be successful in this league, you need like solid top boards and very underrated players. So, I mean, it's possible that Akata is just like vastly underrated compared to what he has here. And yeah, he showed a lot of grit against Rosenthal. Came up huge for Manhattan. Yeah, thanks for tuning in, Alex. Appreciate that. Thanks, David. Thanks, Anton. Kobe Graphics, good night to you. Yep, thanks, Enrique and Zoltan. Sean, Toby, Jan, Jonas. I'm just listing people now. Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. And I'll try to do some live videos from, or not live videos, but I'll try to do some like vlog type videos from London, which I'm going in a couple days. I'll be there on Thursday, technically. I'm leaving tomorrow night. So really hope you guys enjoyed this commentary. If you have a question but didn't get it answered tonight, I know that I missed a lot of comments and going back and forth. Leave it in the comment section to this video. This video is going to be archived immediately after I kill this broadcast. And I will see you guys later. Have a good night, guys, or good morning if you're elsewhere.